Since the period of President Thabo Mbeki, we have seen what they've done in our country. We have seen how they've undermined the will of the people. So the truth of the matter is that it is the ANC's policy for them to undermine the people of Zimbabwe in the pursuit of their own freedom.
Job Sikala, we have to end there. I thank you for joining me on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Jeff Goods. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Friday morning. We are live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. And we're going to have a high of 10 degrees today in Winnipeg, so a little bit cooler, actually, but lots of sunshine, so I bet it's all going to even out and feel great. We do have increasing cloud tonight, chance of showers late this evening, and there was just a little bit of drizzling that I noticed in Winnipeg yesterday. Let's say good morning to the team. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi behind the controls. Our technical producer on the program, Abby, also covers weather on air. Covering the commute this morning and directing the show, good morning, Dylan Longhurst. And good morning to Brad Lillies, who's also on the team this morning. 3 minutes to 6 a.m. Heather Wells is here too. She's in our CBC Manitoba News Centre with headlines.
Good morning. Well, provincial fire officials warn Manitoba is off to an early start for wildfires. Earl Simmons with the Provincial Service says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry, with 3 fires in the north this week alone. All, he says, are human-caused. An elder and residential school survivor agrees it is time for a new daily prayer at the Manitoba Legislature. The current prayer was adopted in 1937. The wording's only been tweaked slightly over the years. Premier Wab Kinew says he'd like to see prayer become more inclusive. Geraldine Shingu says it would be a welcome change, calling it a move forward in reconciliation. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So I mentioned Winnipeg's high 10 today. Over in Brandon, mainly sunny, or high 11 today. And in Thompson, there's going to be some flurries, a chance of flurries this morning at least, and a high of 3 degrees. On the program today, we're going to talk about giving your home an environmental makeover. That's in the first hour of the show. How do you do that? We'll also be looking at a year ago in Ukraine. It was launching its much vaunted spring offensive. What has happened in that year and where do we go from here? In addition, later in the program, we continue our series on housing. Of course, last week was a provincial budget. Next week, we have the federal budget coming up. And then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in town announcing new measures for renters. We are going to look at BC today. That is because in Manitoba, one of the members of Right to Housing Coalition here said that our province should look to BC. They're ahead of us in some of their initiatives. So we're going to do exactly that. So that's coming up after 7 o'clock. What have they been building and how have they been spending the dollars?
Today on Q with Tom Power.
This is a damn fine cup of coffee.
You might know Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks, maybe from Sex and the City. Kyle is the star of a new adaptation of the video game Fallout, but he was also the star of the original film adaptation of Dune. So Kyle will be here to talk about Fallout and how he felt watching the new Dune. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Chris O'Neill-Yates in St. John's. Just one witness is returning to the public inquiry into foreign interference this morning. The head of CSIS, David Vigneault, is being re-examined. After hearing from politicians and their staffers, the Commission has more questions about how Canada's intelligence agencies have been operating. Janice McGregor joins me from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, this inquiry has really illuminated how these spy agencies work, hasn't it?
Yes, indeed. And in particular, how subjective intelligence can be. That briefing documents are not so much carved in stone, proven facts, concrete evidence, but more observational, things being flagged for the awareness of those elected to make decisions. And in their testimony this week, Justin Trudeau and his senior staff said they've learned over time to be skeptical, ask questions, push back. And in the process, they've discovered some of what CSIS provides doesn't paint the whole picture. number, or even maybe an accurate one. The Prime Minister was asked yesterday whether that's impacted his confidence in the head of the spy agency.
No government, no leader should simply be a passive receiver of information and intelligence.
It's not the job of an intelligence service to tell the elected head of government what to do. Something to keep in mind as this inquiry continues to probe the intelligence sharing on foreign interference.
So what are the specific issues that Vigneault has to clear up today?
Well, the case for this somewhat extraordinary witness recall is based on 3 key documents: briefing documents from October and November of 2022 and February of 2023, the final one in particular, notably after leaks about foreign election meddling hit the media. These redacted top secret materials were only disclosed after the director of CSIS had testified, too late for any of the parties withstanding at this inquiry to clarify the contents in cross-examination. And on top of that, we heard this week that because the Prime Minister and his staff are often briefed orally, in part for security reasons, they don't send you home with a lot of handouts, not everything in these documents was actually conveyed, including what was characterized as stark conclusions, warnings to the government that it needs to take more decisive action and impose consequences on perpetrators, or else this interference will persist. Today's extra hour is about getting to the bottom of whether that message was actually delivered.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
To the Middle East now, where Israel is preparing for a direct attack from Iran. A new report this morning suggests U.S. officials are concerned a strike could happen within the next 2 days. For the latest, let's go to Abby Kuhadasan, who's following developments in London.
Israeli officials say they are getting ready for an unprecedented Iranian attack. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this could happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Lina Khatib is the director of the Middle East program at SOAS University in London.
I think what Iran wants more than anything is to save face and to be seen as having retaliated somehow. What it does not want is all-out war.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei will make the decision. He has already vowed to directly strike Israel after its embassy building was attacked last week in Syria, killing a top commander. But the response doesn't necessarily mean a strike on Israeli soil, says Mehran Kamrava, a professor of government at Georgetown University in Doha.
I think the retaliation would be either on Israeli diplomatic facilities somewhere around the world or commercial interests.
The White House has reportedly reached out to Arab partners like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, asking for their help to defuse the situation. The U.S. has now restricted travel for all embassy and consulate staff in Israel out of an abundance of caution.
The Biden administration has been quite cognizant of the fact that Israel has been trying to drag the United States into the conflict.
Some analysts say Netanyahu is trying to deflect attention from Gaza by highlighting the conflict with Iran, where he and Biden are exactly on the same page. Abby Kuhadasan, CBC News, London.
The U.S. House Speaker will be at Donald Trump's Florida Mar-a-Lago estate today. Mike Johnson is hoping for some show of support from the presumed Republican presidential candidate. Johnson is facing threats to his speaker role from hardliners within his own party. Richard Madden is following the story from Washington. Richard, what's the stated reason for Johnson's meeting with Trump today?
Yeah, so the two will appear side by side and reportedly introduce a bill to make it illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Now, of course, this has long been illegal in the U.S., so this event is mostly for show to fire up the party's base in this critical election year. But there's another more pivotal reason why the speaker is cozying up to Trump so publicly. He needs his support as his speakership is under threat from within his own party just 6 months into the job. Far-right Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene recently filed a motion to oust him for not fully embracing the Trump agenda. Keep in mind, House Republicans have a razor-thin majority, so it would take just a handful of them to vote him out. And Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't backing down.
The current Speaker of the House we have right now is getting rolled in every single meeting. He is negotiating from weakness.
So the Speaker's allies have reportedly asked Trump to publicly support him at their joint appearance today. So we'll be watching very closely to see how this plays out.
So Trump does have a history of undermining the Speaker's agenda. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, this is the dilemma. Johnson needs Trump, But Trump has consistently lampooned his agenda, instructing House Republicans to vote against their own bills, to rejecting foreign aid money to Ukraine. But it's clear Speaker Johnson is tying his fortunes to Trump, whether it's by choice or for his political survival.
That's the CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
An outbreak of avian influenza in the U.S. is creating concern for dairy farmers. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say for the first time, bird flu is being detected in cows. Farms in several U.S. states are reporting cases of the highly contagious virus. Tony Waterman reports.
Rachel Moser and her husband have owned this dairy farm in Missouri for more than a decade. She says business has boomed in recent years, but an outbreak of bird flu among dairy cows has her concerned.
It's causing cows to dramatically reduce their milk production, and their milk was going thick and yellow.
While the virus hasn't been detected in Missouri, it has been identified in more than a dozen herds in 8 states in recent weeks, including neighboring Kansas. Dairy farmers are now scrambling to protect their cattle, some reportedly chopping down trees to keep wild birds away. Others are banning visitors and disinfecting equipment. The spread of the highly contagious virus, which has decimated global poultry flocks in recent years, has raised concerns about animal-to-human transmission. A dairy farm worker in Texas tested positive for the virus on April 1st, only the second known human case in U.S. history. But Dr. Dimitri Daskalasis from the CDC says the risk to most people is very low.
It's important to remember that individuals who are interacting with livestock or other animals that have avian influenza, really it's important to connect to public health and medical care to make sure that you're being observed.
Experts say it's also unlikely that people could catch bird flu from eating dairy products, since the pasteurization process kills the virus. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
4 months after kicking French troops out of the country, Niger is welcoming Russian military personnel. State media in the West African country say military trainers arrived yesterday in the capital, Niamey. After last summer's military coup, Niger's military rulers have been aligning themselves with Russia. CBC News has learned new details about a BC bookkeeper accused of defrauding her employer of almost $2 million and spending that money on an expensive car and gold. Yasmin Khanya brings us the details.
A Mercedes-Benz, gold, and a property in Nanaimo. Those are some of the purchases that Galina Kulikova is alleged to have made using diverted funds. Court documents obtained by CBC News show Kulikova worked for the Alacrity Foundation of BC as a bookkeeper before resigning last October. Alacrity is an organization that helps entrepreneurs grow their business with 7 offices in BC and around the world. Kulikova is accused of wiring more than $1.8 million from Alacrity to her personal accounts. Terry Healy is with the Victoria Police Department.
It's a significant amount of money.
Kulikova has been charged with fraud, theft, and laundering proceeds of crime. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Her lawyer declined to comment. Kulikova is scheduled to appear in court in May. Yasmin Ranaya, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that's the latest news from World Report. I'm Chris O'Neill Yates in St. John's. This is CBC News.
Well, hello, and good morning, everybody. I'm Orsi Marcusa. Thanks for choosing us this Friday morning to spend some time with and start your day. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC. As mentioned, I'm Orsi Marcusa. This is 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube, Information Radio. Thanks for being with us and the team this morning. In this hour of the show, we are going to be talking about some spring cleaning in a special way. What if you want to do it with the environment in mind? Where should you make the donations? Do you have some recycling you're not even thinking about that you're just throwing in the trash? We're going to talk all about that. That's this hour on the show. In addition, this hour, 1 year ago, Ukraine was launching its much vaunted spring offensive. Where are we at now? And we begin building on what you may have heard on World Report this morning. Bell Canada defending the decision to cut thousands of jobs, and the CEO yesterday being grilled, including by a Manitoba NDP, and we're going to hear that exchange. Stay tuned. First, let's go to Heather Wells in our news center for other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, fire season has already started in northern Manitoba. Earl Simmons at the Manitoba Wildfire Service says there's already been 3 fires this week alone, all human-caused. He says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry. An elder and residential school survivor supports Wab Kinew's push to change the prayer spoken at the Manitoba legislature. The premier yesterday says Manitoba's a diverse place, and the prayer or opening statement before question period should reflect that. Geraldine Shingoose agrees it's time to get in step with the times, and Rabbi Avram Altine says it's a noble idea, but he says putting lots of ideas into something that becomes real is always a challenge. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Walls. Coming up later in the program, by the way, we're going to get yet another perspective on that conversation. So stay with us. We're going to have the lead pastor from Eastview Community Church on with us this morning. So stay tuned. I've also posted the question up on Facebook, and I think today on Radio Noon, they're actually going to do their call-in portion on this. So I've asked, what do you think of updating the prayer at the ledge to reflect the many, many faiths represented in this province now? So you can weigh in there, or you can call us too. 788-3205. Abby Adeyemi, good morning.
Doing?
I'm good. Did I notice you changed your wheels today?
Yes.
Driving different vehicles.
Now on the 2 wheels.
Yeah. So what are you driving this morning?
It's an electric motorcycle.
Sweet. Back out for the season.
Yeah, but it was a bit chilly on my way in though. I felt the frostiness and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to brave this because the rule is once the street sweepers sweep, the bike rolls out.
Nice.
That's for me.
I like it. I think you've been in your vehicle up to now.
Yeah, I think the car is tired of me. It's like, you know what, I need to take a break.
Well, for other people looking to change their wheels or maybe switch the shoes to something nicer, what's the forecast say?
Yeah, before the forecast, actually, folks in Winnipeg haven't seen, temps in the range of 20 degrees since October 3rd. Last year, and that's a long wait for this warm transition that we've been expecting to come this weekend. So hopefully we should be seeing a warm weather come in on us from like Saturday. I see a pressure building from central United States, which will definitely be pushing into this part of the province, and that's a good sign. But currently it's refreshing, 3 degrees under clear skies. Forecast for Winnipeg today. Yesterday we saw a strong cold northwest breeze and some rain. Some parts of the city actually saw rain. And today will be significantly cooler, but it's going to be delightful because we're going to be getting mainly sunny skies gracing our city. And it's just one of those perfect days to embrace outdoor activities. And as we see the temperature climb to a high of 10 degrees. Now, whether you're planning outdoor activities or just simply that leisure stroll, it's going to be a wonderful time to enjoy the day. Now, as the day progresses, you should keep an eye out for changes because tonight we'll witness increasing cloudiness crawl up on us with a chance of showers also. That's like been in the forecast for like 2-3 days now. That's, light showers spotted here and there, mostly in the late evening periods into the overnight. We will be seeing that. But in Winnipeg right now, a little bit cooler than, a little bit cooler this morning. Guess what? The airport is at -3, and here in the downtown, we are at 3.
That's the urban heat island. I actually think that's the technical term for it over the years. I might have finally got it right.
Yes, true.
Because of the pavement, we warm up more.
We warm up.
Or something.
So
Central
that's what
City.
it looks like. With the sunshine, we're heading to a high of 10 today.
Someone will phone and correct me. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get into what's happening. If you're out and about on the commute, Dylan Longhurst once again this morning. Hello.
Hey, good morning. Speaking briefly of weather and driving, I forgot how beautiful it was when you have that kind of like sunny showers and storm clouds yesterday. I was out and just driving into those dark clouds, that little bit of rain we got. Lovely.
The smell.
Oh,
it was the
so
smell
nice.
for me. Even though we got barely anything where I live, it was just sort of on the windows. It was trying to rain, but not really. It still started to smell that little bit of spring fresh.
Yeah,
It was nice.
that's my sign of spring right there. Commute today, haven't heard anything yet. Still very quiet out there early on the Friday commute. Hopefully it stays that way, but of course if you do see something getting in your way, slowing you down today, give us a call on our commuter line, 204-788-3093.
as I mentioned, and as you might have heard on World Report, the CEO of Bell Canada is actively right now defending the decision to cut thousands of jobs. CEO Mirko Bibic was before the House of Commons Heritage Committee yesterday. Now, I also alluded to the fact that one of our Manitoba MPs got involved in the discussion. So NDP Member of Parliament for the Federal Electoral District of Churchill-Kiiwetinoong-Aski, Nikki Ashton, got a chance to ask questions of Mirko Bibic. Here's a bit of the exchange.
I think we've seen on full display here the extent to which corporate Canada is disconnected and frankly arrogant. The sheer audacity to come before this committee, complain that refusing to show up until the end of May isn't avoiding accountability, and then insisting that more support from government is necessary while millions of Canadians are struggling and thousands of your workers are laid off, boggles the mind. But let's take a moment to look at the facts, not the ones on the Facts Matter website, combating fake news. And I have a copy here, especially point number 10, directed at us, members of the committee, clarifying why you told us it would take almost 3 months for you to show up here. The reality is that government regulates your industry, both in terms of broadcasting and telecommunications. And this committee oversees that work. We were clear, and we have been clear, that you needed to be here much sooner. So let's get to the main issues of today. Over an 8-month period, Bell eliminated 6,000 jobs, including February's announcement of 4,800 job cuts. At the same time, you announced an increase in dividend checks for shareholders. You claimed that Bell was forced into the decision to fire so many workers because the federal government has been slow to deliver help. You've been quoted as saying, "We continue to face a difficult economy and government and regulatory decisions that undermine investment in our networks, fail to support our media business in a time of crisis." A time of crisis. Where I come from, a crisis is wildfires, is thousands of people losing their jobs, kind of like the ones that used to work for Bell Media that you fired. Who's in crisis, Mr. Bibic? You, with your millions of dollars of compensation, or the workers you just fired?
So, Chair, my pleasure to answer those questions. I keenly wanted to be before this committee on March 19th, and I had committed that. In fact, I would have been in front of Indu on March 18th, and it's the committee that rescheduled my appearance, and I'm here, and I always am eager to have a public policy discourse, as I mentioned earlier. Again, with respect to dividends, these dividends benefit
my question is about the crisis.
Each and every
who's in crisis? Is it you or the workers, the thousands of workers that you laid off?
What's undeniable is that the Canadian media ecosystem is in crisis, and one can only need to ask Postmedia and Saltwire and print journalism in the country and our direct traditional media competitors.
Thank you, Mr. Bibic. I think it would be good to hear from, we've all heard from Bell Media workers that have lost their jobs, and I think it's pretty clear that they're the ones facing the crisis. Your board recently gave you a 20% raise. If you truly feel for the thousands of workers you laid off, would you consider taking a 9% reduction in your own salary?
As I mentioned earlier, the
so yes or no
have been thinned out significantly since I became CEO. So because we're always vigilant around costs and around the number of executives we have, and that's resulted in a 40% decrease in compensation.
I take that as a no.
Direct reports of the CEO.
Overtime.
Well, you can hear how heated that exchange got. That was Manitoba NDP. She represents, of course, Churchill-Kiiwetinoong-Aski in the province. Nikki Ashton, yesterday, she was grilling Bell Canada CEO Mirko Bibic at the House of Commons Heritage Committee. He was there defending the decision to cut thousands of jobs. And all parties, as you'll hear on World Report throughout the morning, came forward to grill him, challenging him because the way he positioned the cuts was against a problem with funding from the federal government. And a lot of the MPs coming forward and saying, here's the funding we gave you, so please continue to defend the cuts and tell us why. So you'll hear more of the exchanges and more of the responses as well throughout the morning on World Report. And you can read more online at cbc.ca.
Earth Day at Fort Whyte Alive is a magical time, and this one is for the birds. Let's celebrate not by looking at the earth below, but by looking up to the skies at our feathered friends who make this place so special. I'm Bryce Hoy. Join me for a virtual bird tour. Come to Fort Whyte Alive's Earth Day celebration April 21st and follow the posted QR codes to learn some amazing bird facts. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
6:21 a.m. is the time right now, and from your closets to your kitchen, there's all kinds of ways to make your home a little bit more earth-friendly or eco-friendly, speaking of which. And if you have had spring cleaning in mind, our next guest is here with some ideas that you might not have thought about how to do it in a green way. Candice Batista joins us now. She's the author of Sustained, Creating a Sustainable House Through Small Changes, Money-Saving Habits, and Natural Solutions. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So I heard you want us to go through our garbage and do an audit. Tell us how that would work.
I know it's not the sexiest thing, but honestly, it's such an empowering practice. So in the summer, it's the best time to do it in the summer. You're going to collect all of the garbage that you would typically throw in the recycling bin or the garbage can, and do this for a month. Keep it all in the garage, and then when you're ready, put a tarp out and then spread everything out and basically categorize it. So you'd have all your plastic and food packaging in one pile, your paper, your cleaning products, et cetera, et cetera. Then this is going to give you a real bird's eye view of the kinds of waste that you're bringing into your home. So you might notice like, wow, I'm bringing a lot of plastic packaging because I buy a lot of frozen food, broccoli, that type of stuff. So can you buy the broccoli whole or fresh rather and freeze it yourself? That eliminates those bags. They're soft plastic, which means that they're probably a little bit harder to recycle or even non-recyclable. The softer the plastic, the harder it is. Maybe you notice there's lots of condiments, so things like peanut butter or jam in plastic containers. Can you buy those in glass and then reuse the glass? If you notice a lot of plastic packaging from the bathroom and the kitchen, so cleaning products, skincare products, look on the bottom of the containers for plastics number 1 or 2. Those little recycling symbols with the numbers in them, that actually has nothing to do with consumer recycling. That's just a number that tells the industry what type of resin, in this case plastic, what type of plastic it is. So plastics 1 and 2 typically have much higher recycling rates. So if you notice you are bringing lots of plastic packaging in, can you opt for those 2 types of plastic and just make sure that you recycle them properly? So in the book, I highlight and I dive really deeply into like how to take that garbage audit to the next level. But that's a really great place to start if you want to start living more eco-friendly. You got to know, where do I need to make change?
If you have food waste in your life, and a lot of people might have done that audit already, especially given grocery prices. But if you do still have food waste in your life, and you're wondering how to improve there, can you speak to how important composting is or isn't, or is it better just to cut back? Or people might think I don't need a composter because I have a garburator. Can you speak to some of those things?
So garburator is completely different. So the average Canadian family is wasting about $1,800 of food every single year. We throw out about just over 2 million potatoes every single day in this country. It's brutal. We are putting so much food into landfill. When we put food in landfill, it breaks down over time and it gives off methane gas. Methane gas is way more potent than CO2. So our food waste is actually contributing to global warming when you think about how many people we have just in Canada as an example. So composting is a really wonderful thing. If you have a backyard, you can do a backyard compost. If you live in an apartment or a small building that doesn't have municipal or local programs in place for organic waste, you absolutely can compost. There are 3 different ways to do it. Number 1 is something called vermicomposting. This is where we use worms, red wigglers. We really need to get past the ick factor of the worms. They don't get out. They don't want to get out of their bin, and they do amazing work. You'll really start to understand and get a symbiotic relationship when you see what they're actually doing with your with your waste. It's such a powerful thing, actually. The other way is a Japanese way called bokashi bins. And then the third way is a real innovation in this space is we're seeing small little kitchen appliances, so kind of the same size as a microwave that you can plug in. These are machines that you put the food into a bucket and then close it, and the machine breaks down the food over a period of a few hours and gives you this amazing soil that you can then use in your garden or your backyard or your herb garden or whatever it is.
Very cool.
And we waste a lot of food because, one, we don't store it properly, we don't understand best before dates, and unfortunately we don't shop our fridge before we head out to the grocery store.
Garburators. People think, why do I have to compost? I have a garburator. Isn't that okay?
Well, it's not the same thing, right? At carburetors, you're putting stuff down the sink, it's breaking it up into small bits, and then it's sending it through the system, right? So you're not getting anything out of that. Whereas when you compost your food, you're taking organic waste and turning it into soil. So it's part of that kind of circular economy, right? As opposed to that kind of linear way of thinking. So it's much more effective from a climate standpoint.
What about making your own things besides purchasing things? So specifically cleaning products, if you want to sort of homemade cleaning products. So forevermore, there's been the thing about baking soda and vinegar, put it together, it'll foam up, you can pretty much scrub down anything. Is that still sort of tried and true? And what's new? It's not. Okay, so let's start there.
It's not.
Why not?
So mixing baking soda, this is one of the biggest cleaning myths, and it drives me crazy because you see it on every blog post on Pinterest. Mixing baking soda and vinegar is actually cancels each other out. So yes, you have that foaming bit, wonderful. It doesn't really do much. Once that settles, you just have this kind of soapy water. So it's using baking soda with other ingredients like a Castile soap, for example. If you take a little bit of Castile soap and add a little bit of baking soda to that in a very small bowl, mix that, you now have a really awesome paste that you can use to clean your sink, your kitchen sink, your bathroom sink, and your oven. Very, very effective. You can add essential oils to that, for example.
I'm going to show my major ignorance here, and you'll tell that I'm not the cleaner in my home. I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know what Castile soap is.
Castile soap is a vegetable soap that's very highly concentrated and has no toxic chemicals in it. The most popular brand is Dr. Bronner, who makes all kinds of really wonderful soaps using Castile soap. So Castile soap, you buy it in a big container. You can buy it in bulk, actually, and you use a tiny bit each time. So for a paste, for example, you would use maybe 2 tablespoons in, let's say, half a cup or a cup of baking soda. So you're using so little. So when you add that up over time, you realize how much money you're spending or wasting on conventional cleaning products that are filled with all kinds of toxic chemicals and stuff we just don't want in our home. So Castile soap is a really great way to start your eco-friendly cleaning journey. You can take it one step further using another product called Soul Suds. So basically Castile soap on steroids. So these are really effective things that we've been using for actually generations. Borax, those kinds of things. We're very social engineered. Marketing is so powerful into thinking that we need, a cleaning product for every task in our home, and we absolutely do not. You can make a very effective, let's say, glass cleaner using vinegar, using hydrogen peroxide, using water. There's different recipes that combine those in different ways. And in my book, I highlight all of these. But once you start making them and you see how much money you save, the money savings are so big that you won't go back to conventional cleaning products.
Often they clean better, actually, and leave less residue. I find
do,
natural
absolutely.
cleaners.
And we have this weird thing with fragrance that if your house doesn't smell like bleach, it's not clean, or ammonia. And that is absolutely not the case. Clean and scent have nothing to do with each other.
Appreciate your time this morning. I know that we were never going to cover all the areas, but I learned a great deal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Candice Batista. She's the author of Sustained, Creating a Sustainable House Through Small Changes, Money-Saving Habits, and Natural Solutions. So if you have an idea to add to this, of course, Earth Day is coming up. We would love to hear from you and what you do in your home here in Manitoba. 788-3205 is where you can reach us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us. Traffic moving well this morning. Your commute should be pretty good. Straight ahead spring days, 788-3093. Different phone number for the commuter line if you want to reach us. Coming up on the program this morning, Crystalie Ramlakan will join us as always with business news and our report. She'll have the opening day's markets and numbers, and she will also be talking about housing. Amid high interest rates, as she has some insight into how many people are concerned about being able to own a home. So stay tuned. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 3 degrees. A little cooler start to the day today after yesterday's showers. We do have a cooler day. The sun's back, but a high of 10, which is seasonal for this time of year. Provincial fire officials warn Manitoba is off to an early start for wildfires. Earl Simmons is with the provincial service. He says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry.
We've had 3 fires up in that area this week already. Usually on a regular year, we don't have fires in the north this soon. They occurred more in southern Manitoba, and unfortunately this time of year they're human-caused fires and they're preventable.
Simmons says the province has made some adjustments to its firefighting strategy over the winter. As soon as the fire danger goes up, helicopters and firefighters will be moved into those areas. Simmons says the province also hopes to hire people in rural and northern communities to serve as emergency firefighters. A Winnipeg rabbi says he supports the idea of a more inclusive prayer at the Manitoba legislature, but worries it's easier said than done. Rabbi Avram Altine is the director of Chabad Lubavitch Jewish Learning Center.
It's a noble idea. Whether it could be done in practical terms, I'm not sure. There's a lot of ideas, and putting them into something that it becomes real is always the challenge in a lot of great ideas.
The current prayer recited by the speaker at the start of every question period has only changed a bit since it was first uttered in 1937. Premier Rob Canoe says he would like to see something that includes people from other faith traditions and those with no faith at all. Canoe has invited faith leaders and other Manitobans to help rework the prayer. The head of Canada's spy agency is back today for another appearance before the public inquiry investigating foreign interference. And CSIS Director David Vigneault returns to answer some of the questions that are at the very heart of this inquiry. Specifically, how is intelligence information shared with senior members of the government? This issue was raised in questioning earlier this week, but never clarified.
A briefing note presented to somebody who's briefing us does not necessarily mean that the person briefing chooses to actually relay that information.
That is the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief of Staff, Brian Clow. Today's questioning of the CSIS director will close out this phase of the inquiry. In the Middle East, Israel is preparing for a direct attack from Iran. A new report this morning suggests U.S. officials are concerned a strike could happen in the next 2 days. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers posted a $5.7 million profit last year, but things aren't so rosy for the soccer team. The Valor cost the Bombers $1.25 million last year. Bomber President and CEO Wade Miller says the goal is to get Valor game attendance up to 5,000. He says they also need better results on the field.
We've made some changes both on the soccer operations side. We need better results on the field to help that. And we also need, we dedicated ticketing resources specifically to Valor to try to move that needle.
Miller adds the team has to do more promotion because he doesn't think a lot of Winnipeggers even realize there's a pro soccer team here. Well, how do you celebrate a birthday?
Dylan Samberg with a shot from the line. Gustafson was in front of the net. He may have
tipped it. Yes, he did. David Gustafson in the second period on TSN scoring on his 24th birthday, and it was his first game back since March 28th. Winnipeg blanks the Dallas Stars 3-0. In net, Laurent Brossoit making 24 saves for his third shutout of the season. Head coach Rick Bowness says Brossoit was outstanding.
Timely saves when we needed them. We didn't give up a lot of great A's tonight, but when we did, he was there. He's been so good for us this year. He's been outstanding.
Last night's win is the Jets' fifth straight and moves Winnipeg to second spot in the Central Division, 5 points behind the team they just beat, the Dallas Stars. The Jets now have the same points as Colorado, and that's where Winnipeg wraps up this road trip against the Avalanche tomorrow afternoon. That's a 3 p.m. start. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells in our news center. Let's get straight into our regional forecast now with Abby Adiyemi. Good morning.
Good morning. Once again, it's clear outside. Winnipeg is at 3 degrees. It's shaping up to be a wonderful day. We will see mainly sunny skies throughout, perfect for whatever you want to do outdoors today. And we'll be reaching a high of 10 degrees. But keep an eye out for changes as the day progresses. We'll be seeing some cloud crawl in during the evening period. Now, across the province, the temperatures are varying because Winnipeg happens to be the only part of the region that's above the freezing point. We're seeing Brandon is crispy at -2 degrees with partly cloudy conditions. We're expecting mainly sunny skies later, and then the temperatures would climb to a high of 11 degrees. Moving north to Thompson, it's chilly at -2 under cloudy conditions. Today we're going to see the same chance of flurries we saw yesterday, and then a high of +3. Now further north in Churchill, it's even colder at -7 with cloudy skies. We're anticipating a chance of a high chance of snow actually this morning, and we'll see a high of -4. Heading down to Dauphin, it's a 0 with clear conditions. Today will bring a mix of sun and cloud, and then temperatures will climb to a high of 10. In Gimli, it's -1 and clear. The Interlake region today will be seeing mainly a mix of sun and clouds and climbing to a high of 10. Steinbach is at -2. And finally, Morris, it's -3 and clear. The Pembina Valley region will enjoy mainly sunny skies today and will climb to a high of 12 across the province. We'll see mostly cloudy conditions in the north, and then a mix of sun and cloud in the southern part. And we'll be in Winnipeg here. It's sunny, and we'll get to a seasonal high of a 10.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get to an update on the morning commute with Dylan Longhurst.
Hey, you might notice traveling northbound on Dunkirk approaching Osborne, the traffic is just a little bit slower at this time. And that's because we actually heard about a puppy that got out and was running around on the roadway. Now, the good news to this story, Marcy, is that...
You can see my face.
Yes.
I'm just like, no, please end well.
Yeah, the first question I had is the puppy okay? And yes, the puppy has been safely scooped up, removed from the roadway. So puppy is safe. Traffic should be flowing back to normal, but again, those delays as cars kind of stop to deal with the situation is just going to cause a bit of a domino effect for a little while.
Yeah.
Not major delays, but yeah, a little bit slower on northbound Dunkirk. Puppy's okay.
Good. It's funny because you were talking about signs of spring earlier this morning. We were saying the smells, all the different things. For me, the puppies coming out is one of them. You see people, if you got a puppy over the winter months, like these are the first walks. And I love when they're all like gangly and they don't know what direction to go. And they're kind of scooting off. And
Yeah, they're figuring it out still. But yes, puppy's okay. Slow northbound Dunkirk. If you see anything else, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Dylan. That's how I look walking to work on a Monday morning. All disoriented, tired, not sure which way to go. Crystal Lee Ramlakan joins us via Zoom here with business news. Hello.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So we are continuing to talk about housing. Actually, later in the show, we're going to have a close look at BC and their housing acquisition fund to help renters. But let's hear more about interest rates and people who are trying to own homes. You have some insight today about how many people are concerned that might not happen. What are you hearing?
So 3 in 4 Canadians who don't own a property say buying a home feels out of reach. And that's according to a new survey from CIBC. But there is some optimism, though. More than half are still holding onto their goal of owning a home one day. And at least 70% of non-homeowners said they were priced out of the market. And almost 2/3 said it's been hard to save for a down payment. Carissa Lucreziano is CIBC's Vice President of Financial Planning and Advice.
48% of Canadians said that they are considering moving outside a major city to get more home for their dollar. And then 26% of Canadians say that they would consider buying a home with friends to afford home ownership.
So the poll was released yesterday, the same day the federal government announced longer amortization periods. So it's going to allow 30-year insured mortgages for first-time homebuyers who purchase new builds. And the government is also nearly doubling the amount first-time homebuyers can withdraw from RRSPs to buy a home to $60,000. So that's up from $35,000. And people will also get more time to begin repayment, up to 5 years rather than 2, if they withdraw between the beginning of 2022 and the end of next year.
Stay with us. As I mentioned, we have another story about housing after 7 o'clock. We're going to go to BC for an example of something they're doing there to try to help people who are trying to rent. They're not even in the thinking about owning a home yet, but still challenges with that. Let's go to another story. Instagram is aiming to make it more difficult for scammers and for criminals to extort teenagers. What are the details of this?
Well, it's testing a new feature to curb an alarming trend called financial sextortion, which often targets children. So scammers convince teens to send nude images and then claim they'll post them publicly online where their friends and family can see, unless they are sent money. Now, in the upcoming weeks, Instagram plans to roll out features to some users, such as blurring images sent in direct messages and informing users when they've interacted with someone who engaged in financial sextortion. Now, the tools are supposed to be available worldwide soon after that. And Marcy, law enforcement says it has seen an increase in financial sextortion cases from strangers, often by scammers overseas. So before, maybe it was more people that, the teens knew or some sort of revenge, but now that trend is kind of changing. So for more on this, here's Ritesh Kotek, who is a cybersecurity technology analyst and lawyer.
If the platform is seen to be toxic, individuals will leave. Advertisers won't advertise on it. So if you don't do stuff to keep harmful content off your platform, that is going to cost you. There is another component of this as well, and that is countries around the world are passing online harms legislation. In Canada, we are looking at online harms legislation that has been introduced already that will hold platforms accountable.
So Meta, along with other social networks, are facing thousands of wrongful death lawsuits about how the platforms have caused harm to young users, from facilitating the sales of lethal drugs to enabling eating disorders and social media addictions.
And finally, to another story before markets today, there's been a lot of concern, of course, around schooling with the release of ChatGPT. But what's the latest impact of the new tech?
Well, over the last year, high school and college students turned in over 22 million papers that used some form of generative AI. And that's according to data from Turnitin, which detects plagiarism and AI in schoolwork. So it's been about a year and a half since these AI tools flooded the internet. And in response, Turnitin and other education companies created detection tools. Turnitin claims its detector has reviewed more than 200 million papers, and it says 1 in 10 papers had about 20% written by AI, and 3% of papers contain at least 80% of AI-generated writing. However, though, experts say AI detection software is not as reliable as services that call out plagiarism. The software itself may contain bias about what it thinks is AI written. So a study last year found that 7 AI detecting tools had a 61% false positive rate when reviewing exams that tested English as a second language speakers applying to colleges. Now, that study did not include Turnitin, which claims its false positives rate is around 1%. And, Marcy, false positives could really have a detrimental effect on a student's academic career if they're, accused of something that they didn't do.
Let's look at the markets now, Crystal. What do the numbers tell us?
In Europe, markets are higher as investors digest UK economic data and reflect on a somewhat murky U.S. inflation outlook. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 95 cents to $85.97 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up 37.20 to $2,409.90 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.3 cents to 72.76 cents U.S.
All right, Crystal Ramlichan, have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Thanks, you too, Marcy.
That is Business News on CBC with Crystal Ramlichan. It is 6:44 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app this morning. It's mainly clear in the city of Winnipeg. It's 3 degrees. We're heading for a high of 10. We're going to get lots of sunshine, though, so that always makes it feel a lot warmer, even than the daytime highs that are on the forecast, the ones that we see. But 10 degrees is the high. Brandon, partly cloudy. You're going to head for 11 today with sunshine, and Thompson, a high of just 3 degrees, 30% chance of flurries right now in Thompson. You're sitting at -2. Well, next on the show, if you're watching the Junos this year, then you saw saw a little tiny teaser of this tune performed live. I'm talking about Ella Soupy's Heart of Glass. It's the cover that she did, the Inuk artist. But we wanted to play it all for you, especially because just this week it was announced that she is going to be playing the Montreal Jazz Fest. So if you're looking for a road trip and you're digging this next music we're going to play, June 30th is the date of her show in Montreal. But here's Ella Soupy and Heart of Glass. Sung entirely in Inuktitut, that is Ella Soupy's Heart of Glass, the cover of the 1979 hit song by Blondie. Just love that version. Gorgeous. You probably saw her perform part of that in a showcase on the Juno Awards this year on CBC. If you want to see Ella Soupy in person, this week it was announced she will be playing the Montreal Jazz Fest. So take a road trip. She plays June 30th. 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. I'm RC Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's switch gears here to serious matters. This week, Russia hit out at Ukraine with a series of guided bombs, drones, and hypersonic missiles. It is targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure and power plants right now. Ukraine is holding on. It is pressuring Western allies, though, for military aid. And there's no end in sight now with what's become a war of attrition. Both countries are getting ready for a spring conscription of soldiers. Zhanna Dovich joins us. She's a freelance journalist in Kiev, and she is with us via Zoom today. Hello there.
Hello. Good morning.
So tell us a little bit about what it feels like they're covering the war at this point, Zhanna.
Of course, war is quite a complicated situation at all, and for Ukrainians, because, of course, we know that this full-scale invasion is for 2 years, and we are living with this for 2 years, and every day we have air alarms in almost all Ukrainian territory, and especially south and east of Ukraine is affected by war dramatically. And maybe you heard that yesterday one of the biggest power plants was shelled by Russian missiles, and this power plant in Kyiv region was destroyed. So it affected, of course, life of people who are living nearby. In Kyiv we have electricity, but for people in villages and small towns it's worse. And in the same time, I would say that our emergency services, they are working on a high level, and they are real heroes. So situation is, different. From one hand, people are living like everyday life. From other hand, the consequences of war, they are really dramatic.
Can you walk us through the wave of Russian strikes in Ukraine, in the significance of that?
Yes, it's very, very difficult for us, and mostly the eastern and southern regions are suffering of it, and such big cities as Kharkiv, where living more than 1 million people. And Russia wants to occupy this city first of all, and the situation there is quite complicated. Last week they had blackouts for 3 days, and the metro, like Kharkiv metro, didn't work, but already it's working, and unfortunately people are living in so tense situation every day. And for other regions, yesterday, for example, not even this power plant in Kyiv region was attacked, but as well the electricity infrastructure in Kherson region, and some villages and towns are without electricity now.
What can you tell us about the spring military conscription that I mentioned on both sides, and how that speaks to where we're going? What do you understand about that?
Russia is a huge country by the territory and has a huge population. Of course, they have a bigger opportunity for conscription campaign, and their Minister of Defense already told that they want to form 2 new armies. As well, we heard, I read in some Russian medias that they already have new 100,000 people in army who joined the Russian army voluntarily since the beginning 2024. Actually, I don't know if we have to believe to this information, because we can't check it. And what did we heard already, that they want to conscript much more people. And in the same time, British intelligence is saying that probably Russia doesn't have so much financial resources to have so huge army. But in compare with Ukraine, anyway, their opportunities are higher, and the quantity of Russian troops exceeds Ukrainian in 7-10 times. And yes, we have this ongoing status of mobilization campaign in Ukraine. And just a few days ago, new mobilization law was voted in Ukrainian parliament, and it gives to state opportunity to recruit more people in army.
Are there more people to recruit, I guess, is the question when you think about so many people fighting now and people that have left, of course, and the fatigue. What's your sense of that?
Some people, already many people join army voluntarily, and that we have this war with Russia already for 10 years. And mostly people who wanted to join army voluntarily, they did it already. And some people, they joined army in 2014, they served for a few years and then came back to kind of normal life. But when the full-scale invasion started, they stayed in the lines, and many other people who never served in army, they stayed in the lines to recruitment centers to join army. And mostly people who wanted to join army voluntarily, they are already in army. And there are other people who are, they have such positions. So, okay, if I will receive these papers to join army, I would join. If not, I would not go to army. And there are other people who are hiding from army as well. It's just people nature. So some people are have fear to join army, to be killed and so on. And other people are more active and I'd say maybe more patriotic. If it's possible to say this way.
Complicated. Thank you very much, Jana. Be safe, and thank you very much for speaking with us this morning from Kiev.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques. That's Jana Dovic. She's a freelance journalist. She is in Kiev this morning. I just want to mention also that in addition to coverage of what's happening in Ukraine, coming up on World Report in 3 minutes' time, we're going to talk about 1 year in Sudan's civil war. So famine looming large there. So we'll get an update on World Report in national and international news. So stay with us. Right now, let's touch base with Heather Wells, who's in our CBC Manitoba News Centre with our local updates.
Good morning. Well, a 34-year-old man has died after he drove down the wrong lane on the Perimeter Highway, crashing into a concrete divider. RCMP say it happened just before 5 yesterday morning at the Perimeter near Lagimodiere, so we'll hear more about that. And an elder and residential school survivor supports Wab Kinu's push to change the prayer spoken at the Manitoba Legislature. The Premier says Manitoba's diverse and the prayer or opening statement should reflect that. Geraldine Shingus agrees and says it's time to get in step with the times. Our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, you're already weighing in on this. Allison Moore saying, I like the idea of setting intentions to invoke good work. No prayer needed, though, from my point of view. As well, Valinda Bennett writing in, no prayer needed. That way no one is left out or offended. Just wish everyone a happy day. And Manny Callisto saying, if there's going to be a prayer, it should be inclusive of all Manitobans. So if you want to weigh in, please do so. I've popped that question up on Facebook, and I know there's going to be a call in this afternoon, I believe, on Radio Noon about this. 2 minutes to 7 now. It's mainly clear. It's 3 in Winnipeg. Sunny. A high of 10 is what's coming. And if you need us on the morning commute, please call us 788-3093 if you see any issues on your way to work this morning or wherever you're out and about. Thanks for making us part of your start of your day. Nice to see the sun shining out there, the sky clear. And coming up on the show in the next hour, look at what BC's housing strategy is. That is what one person involved in the Right to Housing Coalition here said after the provincial budget came out, that Manitoba should look to BC. So we're going to do that this morning. What have they been doing with a fund that they set up to try to help people that are looking for rental units there? And how successful has it been? They're a year into this. We have similar measures here, but we'll learn because they've come before us with the initiatives. So stay tuned for that conversation. In addition to the next hour of the show, we did ask Winnipeggers on the street their thoughts on the legislative prayer being changed at the beginning of each question period. So we'll hear some of that in the next hour. CBC's Jim Agapito was out and about. And then it may have been cooler than you were hoping for, but this March was the hottest March our planet has seen since we started keeping records, and the trend is likely to continue for now. We'll find out more about that. There's new data that just came out this week, and we'll have some more analysis of it for you just ahead of 8 o'clock. I am Marcy Marcuso with our team here at Information Radio. Brad and Dylan and Abby behind the glass, and we're all back with you after World Report. Stay here on CBC. You're with 89.3.
Today on The Current. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Spaghetti sucks.
Falls off the fork, doesn't catch enough sauce. The food podcaster Dan Pashman was not happy with the pasta shapes in his pantry, and so he invented a new one. Dan Pashman on rethinking the noodle, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Chris O'Neill Yates in St. John's. We begin now in the Middle East, where Israel is preparing for a direct attack from Iran. A new report this morning suggests U.S. officials are concerned a strike could happen in the next 2 days. For the latest now, let's go to Abby Quatassan, who's following those developments in London.
Israeli officials say they are getting ready for an unprecedented Iranian attack. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this could happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Lina Khatib is the director of the Middle East program at SOAS University in London.
I think what Iran wants more than anything is to save face and to be seen as having retaliated somehow. What it does not want is all-out war.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei will make the decision. He has already vowed to directly strike Israel after its embassy building was attacked last week in Syria, killing a top commander. But the response doesn't necessarily mean a strike on Israeli soil, says Mehran Kamrava, a professor of government at Georgetown University in Doha.
I think the retaliation would be either on Israeli diplomatic facilities somewhere around the world or commercial interests.
The White House has reportedly reached out to Arab partners like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, asking for their help to defuse the situation. The U.S. has now restricted travel for all embassy and consulate staff in Israel out of an abundance of caution.
The Biden administration has been quite cognizant of the fact that Israel has been trying to drag the United States into the conflict.
Some analysts say Netanyahu is trying to deflect attention from Gaza by highlighting the conflict with Iran, where he and Biden are exactly on the same page. Abby Quatassan, CBC News, London.
As Sudan approaches the one-year mark in its civil war, a humanitarian aid organization is warning about a huge impact on children. Médecins Sans Frontières says severely malnourished children are common. It's widespread and deadly. In one camp for people displaced by the violence near Darfur, the agency says a third of children are acutely malnourished, with at least one child dying every 2 hours. Abdallah Hussein is with MSF in Sudan.
We have a nutritional crisis. It's a catastrophic nutritional crisis. The children that we screened in the camp of Zamzam is a tip of the iceberg. We're talking about only one camp. It could be much worse.
The fight between rival military factions began on April 15th last year. Since then, thousands of people have been killed. Close to 9 million others have been forced from their homes. The head of Canada's spy agency is back in the hot seat today. The public inquiry investigating foreign election interference was supposed to wrap earlier this week, but CISA's director David Vigneault has been recalled to face some pointed questions. Catherine Tunney tells us why.
So these we understand to be briefing notes that were prepared for the CSIS director.
For weeks, the inquiry investigating foreign election meddling has been dissecting classified documents, including clear warnings from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service about Chinese interference, typed out in stark briefing notes and made public this week.
Well, these are briefing notes that I never saw.
But the target of those briefings, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his office, testified that details on the page weren't always shared with them in person. Deputy Chief of Staff Brian Clow.
A briefing note presented to somebody who's briefing us does not necessarily mean that the person briefing chooses to actually relay that information.
The issue of who knew what when goes to the heart of the inquiry, which was triggered by allegations Trudeau's government was aware about foreign meddling but chose not to act. It's why Commissioner Marie-Josée Hogg decided to recall CSIS Director David Vigneault as a witness for a special hour of testimony this morning to grill Vigneault about whether he did omit information when briefing PMO, and if so, why? Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
Bell's CEO faced some tough questions from MPs examining the state of news media in Canada. Bell has been laying off thousands of workers, selling off radio stations, and ending many TV newscasts. As Rafi Boudjikanian reports, Mirko Bibik's defense of those decisions did not sit well with the committee.
The industry's in flux due to technological disruption.
Mirko Bibic tried explaining his company's decisions as soon as he started talking, and as soon as the MPs started asking questions, they showed they were not impressed. From Conservative Rachel Thomas pointing out the money Bell has received in federal subsidies.
There's hundreds of millions of dollars that has been given to Bell. And yet, here we are discussing the cutting.
To Liberal Talib Noor Mohammed.
My question was about your compensation package. And you've answered that, in fact, it was approximately $13 million.
That's correct.
What does the average journalist working in your newsrooms earn?
I wouldn't have that precise number.
To NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
Your justification for laying off workers is because you had the consumers in mind? That does not make any sense at all to me, sir.
Oh, it makes very good sense because what we're trying to do.
Bell's CEO found himself targeted over the nearly 11,000 job cuts announced in 2 waves last June and this February, along with cuts in news programming at CTV stations owned by the company and the radio stations it is selling off. The Committee of MPs is also looking at cuts in other news outlets, including CBC Radio-Canada. The corporation's president, Catherine Tate, who testified in January, will be back again next month. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
An economist in the Northwest Territories is sounding the alarm over the future of the mining industry. Graham Clinton says the territory has no plan to deal with decommissioning mines. In his report released this week, Clinton warns of widespread economic impact. Juanita Taylor reports.
I am extremely concerned about our future.
Economist Graham Clinton says the lack of vision and planning in the Northwest Territories is the focus of his report. Titled Eyes Wide Open, he presented it to the City of Yellowknife earlier this week. The numbers in Clinton's findings are staggering. 1,500 jobs could be lost. Over 1,000 residents could leave the territory. Not a surprise, says Yellowknife City Councillor Steve Payne.
We've been talking about the issue of no exploration for years.
Diavik Diamond Mine is slated to close in 2026. Gahcho Kué's will likely follow 4 years later, and Ekati's future is dependent on underwater mining technology. Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment, Caitlin Cleveland, is more optimistic about the territory's economic future.
Our resources are incredible.
Cleveland says she has been working with Diavik Diamond Mine on how to support its northern staff leading into their next career. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
Transport Canada is giving the owner of a New Brunswick sailboat an end-of-month deadline to move the vessel. At the start of the winter, the boat became trapped by ice in the St. John River, but it has now sunk. Mia Urquhart has the details.
All that's visible of the sailboat, not a starship, are 2 masts stretching above the surface of the St. John River. 3 months ago, the owner told CBC he was confident his 13-meter vessel was sturdy enough to survive a winter frozen in ice. It now sits on the bottom of the river, and Transport Canada has given Jordan Tatton until April 30th to remove it or face fines. Local residents expressed concern about the sailboat for months, even before the river froze. Rob Tom lives in Greenwich and is a member of the local fire department. He says it poses a navigational hazard, and his department isn't equipped or allowed to help if a boater hits one of the masts and needs help.
When it comes out of the water, it'll be a sigh of relief for us, for sure.
Although Tom and others watched the sailboat slowly sink this winter, for the boat's previous owner, it came as a gut punch. Trevor Laird says a stranger sent him a message saying simply, "Somebody sank your boat."
I was floored, to be honest. I told my wife, it almost brought a tear to her eye. I was just like, what?
CBC tried to contact current owner Jordan Tatton, but he did not respond to interview requests. Mia Urquhart, CBC News, along the St. John River.
And finally,
American woman, stay away from me. American woman, mama, let me be.
your favorite cover bands won't be performing this song much longer, or any Guess Who song written by Burton Cummings. According to a report in Rolling Stone magazines, Cummings is terminating the performing right agreements for all his songs. It's a major step, one that will cost him some money in missed royalties, but Cummings says it's necessary because he's trying to stop a cover band that's been touring, pretending to be the real Guess Who.
American woman, get away from me.
And that's the latest national and international news. I'm Chris O'Neill Yates in St. John's. This is CBC News.
Well, by the way, we have done some local coverage on that story about Burton Cummings. So if you want to check it out, go on our website and go back to see other interviews we've had on. Maybe here on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. That's the name of the show. You're listening to The Morning Show on CBC. We're downtown live in Winnipeg under a blue sky on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Coming up this hour on the program, following our story on housing today, we're doing a bit of a series coming out of the federal budget, coming out of the provincial budget and looking ahead to the federal budget. Today we're going to take a look at another province to see how their housing fund works and what lessons we can learn from British Columbia. So we have a similar fund here to help renters specifically. However, British Columbia has had it in place for a little bit longer and they have a lot more money in the kitty. So we'll hear more about how that works. In addition, at 7:40, we asked for your thoughts on the legislative prayer being read at the beginning of each question period changing. And we'll talk about a new report about the planet. March might have been cooler than you were hoping for, but overall it was the hottest March our planet has seen since record keeping began. So we'll have that discussion about the implications of that, also the local implications of that in Manitoba. That's just before 8 o'clock. Right now, Heather Wells is in with news updates and headlines.
Good morning. Fire season has already started in northern Manitoba. Earl Simmons at the Manitoba Wildfire Service says there have already been 3 fires this week alone. All were human-caused. Simmons says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry. We're going to hear more from him. And a move forward in reconciliation. That is how an elder and residential school survivor feels about Wab Kinew's push to change the prayer spoken at the Manitoba Legislature. Geraldine Shingus agrees it's time to get in step with the times. And Rabbi Avram Altine calls it a noble idea, but says putting lots of ideas into something that becomes real is always a challenge. We'll hear more coming up in our next news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We are also asking that question on Facebook and what your thoughts are on it. I'll get to some comments in a moment. First, let's go to the weather forecast. Abby Adiyemi's in with a look at the day.
Good morning once again, Marcy. Winnipeg, we are currently at 2 degrees. We've dropped 1 on the mercury's dropped 1 under clear skies. We're looking at what looks like mainly sunny skies throughout the day with temperatures climbing to a high of 10 degrees. Now, for folks, I'll tell you, you just have to soak up some of the sunshine and enjoy the crispy air that you'll be getting. But as we move into the evening, we will start to see some changes. Increasing cloudiness will roll in and a chance of showers later this evening and into the overnight period. Across the province, Brandon's at -2, Thompson is chilly at -2 with some flurries already. Churchill is even colder at -7 with light snow. Dauphin hits 0, Gimli's at -1, Steinbach is at -3, and Morris sits at -4. Mostly the up northern part of the province is mostly cloudy, but the down south here, it's a bit of sunshine. That's what we will be getting. And Winnipeg, we're heading to a seasonal high of 10 degrees.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
On the commute this morning, should be pretty straight ahead. Really, things have just dried out there, and you should have a pretty decent drive in. If you are biking, of course, also pretty good news. Still a little dirty and dusty out there, and watch those potholes. And obviously, we're all sharing the road. Got lots of calls yesterday about how to do that or not, where you see it working, where you see those challenges out in the city of Winnipeg. But otherwise, you should have a straight ahead commute. We're not hearing anything on our commuter line yet early this morning. 788-3093. So I mentioned we've been getting comments on the Premier giving the prayer that's recited in the legislature an update to reflect more faiths. And some of you have been writing in that it should be inclusive of all Manitobans if there is going to be a prayer. Others are writing in that there's no prayer needed. And so people are continuing to weigh in there. I just want to remind you of a new format that started on Radio Noon yesterday. They're going to be doing a call-in time to time between 12:30 and 1. And today this is going to be their question. So if you already want to weigh in, hold that thought is what I'm going to say. Program the phone numbers into your phone and call in. Janet Stewart, who is hosting the show during Marjorie Dalhouse's mat leave, is taking calls live, and she always has a special guest. That's the plan. I just think she always does. Yesterday was the first call in. They talked about the whiteout and the Jets' decision to have the whiteout parties. But if you want to call in today on this issue about the prayer in the legislature, or the change rather coming, the numbers to have on hand in your phone are in Winnipeg, 204-780-0893. Or the out-of-town number, if you want to program it for fast dialing in your phone, is 1-800-268-5483. Well, we had hoped to have a conversation about what BZ's housing strategy looks like, specifically for renters around an acquisition fund they have. But we're just having a challenge reaching our guests this morning. So we're going to switch gears on you, and we hope that we'll be able to bring that story for you a little bit later in the program, potentially. But let's begin this half hour talking about budgeting. Way back before Excel spreadsheets, household budgeting was old school. So people sat down at the kitchen table and balanced the checkbook. Now, of course, you can pay lots of ways. Debit, credit, online. You can tap. You can press the little button on the side of your phone. We have every convenience under the sun. But as CBC producer Danielle Nerman tells us this morning, some of the old ways of making household budgets are making a comeback.
Sasha Gray just paid off $35,000 in debt.
I was so emotional when it happened. I remember just submitting that last payment online and just crying.
And it only took
55 weeks to be exact.
If you're like, I'll have what she's having, get ready to throw your credit card in the freezer. Every 2 weeks, Sasha goes to the bank and withdraws her entire paycheck. Then she takes that stack of cash and divvies it up into 20 envelopes.
Dining out is getting $75. My groceries envelope, I'm going to be putting $150.
It's called cash stuffing. You only spend the money in your envelopes. Once they're empty, too bad, so sad. No more skip the dishes.
Having that budget and not overspending and just frivolously buying whatever the heck I want when I want. I had more money all of a sudden to put towards my debt.
Last year, consumer debt in Canada reached $2.4 trillion, up 3% from the year before. That might explain why budgeting trends like cash stuffing are popping up on TikTok.
Look at all this cash that I stored away instead of spending on unnecessary items.
So I'll just count it with you. So I've got 20, 40, 60.
There are nearly 100,000 posts with the hashtag cash stuffing. And while this idea may be new to millennials and Gen Zs, it ain't new.
So I don't want to say how long I've been in this business, but that would be something I recommend way back in the early 90s.
Lori Campbell is with the insolvency firm Doyle Saluski. She says cash stuffing is just a snazzy new name for old school budgeting. And if you're in over your head, it can get you back on track. But it's risky.
I can understand how people think they need to compartmentalize their money so they don't overspend in one area, but there are so many amazing apps to do that. And there's so many dangers to running around with a bunch of cash in your pocket.
Also, if you pay for everything with cash, you're not building a credit score.
And I think if you're 20 or 21, maybe you're not thinking that far ahead, but you should be. You should be thinking about what happens in 10 years when you've been using cash for the last 10 years. And suddenly you're like, well, maybe I should be looking at my future and buying a house. You're going to be a blank slate. And when a potential creditor goes to look up your information, there's nothing there.
Lori says you also lose out on the perks that come with credit cards, like cash back, free flights, and loyalty points. But Sasha Gray feels she didn't have a choice. Being so deep in debt meant she had to stop using her credit card.
The points didn't matter at that point because I couldn't trust myself.
Now she only pays with plastic when she absolutely has to, like when she books a flight online. And what Sasha loses by not collecting credit card points, she more than makes up for as an influencer.
Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. For those of you,
she's Canadian Girl Cash Stuffer on YouTube.
I had somebody comment, I think just yesterday, saying that they started cash stuffing because of me and they're almost debt free. So it's pretty cool to see that other people are doing something that they see I'm doing and they've had success with it.
What I thought I would do today is sit down with you
and work out exactly what I do every single time I get paid. So
For CBC Radio, I'm Danielle Nerman.
For more stories about money and the economic forces that are all around us, remember you can subscribe to the CBC's Cost of Living podcast, and you can catch a show live Sunday at noon here on CBC Radio. There's a joke in my house. We call it envelope math. I have this habit. So I'll open a piece of mail, and then I'm also one of those people that doesn't like neatly open mail. I'll like rip it open. So there's always these like mangled envelopes all over our home before I stack them up and recycle them. But they can be there for ages because our shredder also broke. So these things are around. And for whatever reason, they're my favorite thing to do budget math on. Like those are the things where you're going to find everything scrolled down in terms of what bills we've paid, what's coming out, what's going on. So there's these random numbers all over, mangled envelopes all over our house. But maybe I was onto something. Who knew?
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose. The 2024 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
7:21 a.m. the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio. We're live downtown in Winnipeg. We got a nice blue sky out there, everybody. It's 3 degrees, lots of clear sky, and mainly sunny for the day with a high of 10. We've got music that'll speak to the songbirds we're going to see up in that blue sky today. This is Tim Baker out of St. John's.
Like a fool in a foolish coat, trying to be cool, but just being cold. I have seen the saddest thing, not you crying, but that you're hiding it from me. No, be free, just be as you like, and sing like a bird, and so in singing flight. No, be free, but connected to the sky, and sing like a bird, so in singing flight. Singing like dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die. Like dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die, die-die. I saw you shrink back into your sleep. I saw you shrink until you disappeared from me. What do you hide from? And what hides from us? And what kind of colors have we covered up and lost? No, be free, just be as you like, dancing like a bird to the oncoming light. No, be free, but connected to the sky, dancing like a bird, and so in singing flight. Singing like dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die. Like dee-dee-die, die-die, dee-dee-die, die-die.
Tim Baker out of St. John's and Songbirds on CBC. Well, we asked you on Facebook this morning, Manitoba's Premier wants to give the prayer that's recited in the legislature an update to reflect more faiths. What do you think? Tim Tree Carey writing in, this is long overdue. There are many, many spiritual people out there who want little to do with religion. A prayer to acknowledge a higher power or an intention to work in alignment with higher principles would be excellent. And also weighing in, Tandar Siwak weighing in, removing prayer is bad. It makes us think we are gods and can do all. Acknowledging God is a humbling act that is important for our leaders. Now, to be clear here, the Premier has not suggested removing prayer. He is talking right now about how to start the Legislative Assembly with something different than the current prayer, which doesn't reflect all faiths. So we'll see what this develops. He's actually in conversation, he says, with multi-faith leaders right now about what that's going to look like moving forward. But if you want to weigh in, please do. And thank you to everyone who is weighing in. That's on my Facebook page, Marcy Marcusa, online. It acts as a show page during show hours, which is right now. 7:25. Scott Regehr joins us with Morning Sports. Hello to you.
Hey there. Happy Friday, Marcy.
Happy Friday. It certainly is for the Jets. I know you'll talk about that in a moment. But let's start with Canada through to the semifinals of the World Women's Hockey Championship.
Yeah, and unlike last year's Worlds, Marcy, they didn't need overtime to do it this time. Led by defender Renata Fast, Canada beat Sweden 5-1. The Canadians managed 2 fast goals within the game's first 5 minutes and mostly cruised from there. Defender Jocelyn Larocque, who's from St. Anne, plays alongside Fast professionally and at the international level and shared her thoughts.
It's great to see 2 for her. I mean, that's huge. I was telling the coaching staff to put her out at the end and try to get a hat trick. That would have been pretty cool. But I mean, that's, getting to the semifinals was the emphasis of today. But to see her get 2 goals, I mean, I was thrilled.
The Canadian team will have a few bumps and bruises after this encounter, Marcy. The Swedish Women's Professional League introduced body checking last season, and we saw a lot of rough stuff last night. The Swedes probably weren't thrilled either, having to listen to ABBA's Gimme, Gimme, Gimme played over and over again on the arena's sound system, since that just happens to be Canada's goal song. Next up, a semifinal match Saturday against Czechia, then hopefully for Canada, an appearance in Monday's final, where the winner takes it all. Meanwhile, Mamma Mia, Laurent Brossoit with his 3rd shutout in his last 5 games. It's Friday. As the Jets beat Dallas last night. For Winnipeg, a 5th victory in a row, Marcy, and it sees them tied with Colorado for 2nd place in the Central Division. A huge game then tomorrow in Denver, which could well determine whether the Jets or the Avalanche has home ice advantage to start the playoffs. Going to be fun.
Let's count the ABBA references as we continue here. I'm hoping for more. Let's go to baseball. The Jays look poised to do some winning in a series that starts tonight.
Yeah, more John Denver than ABBA in this case. The Colorado Rockies in Toronto. This is a team, Marcy, that once boasted stars like Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story and then traded them away and now boasts one of the worst records in the game. So a chance for Toronto to make up some ground tonight in their division, where they currently sit in the AL East basement. Meanwhile, another twist in the tale of almost Blue Jay Shohei Ohtani. After bilking Ohtani out of $16 million, his former interpreter and supposed best friend, Ippei Mizuhara, was formally charged with wire fraud yesterday. Lead prosecutor Martin Estrada shared some of the depths Mizuhara stooped to.
We've obtained recordings of telephone calls in which Mizuhara spoke with bank employees, lied to them about being Mr. Ohtani, gave personal biographical information for Mr. Ohtani in order to impersonate him, and thereby convinced the bank to approve large wire transfers to the bookmaker.
Wow, man.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is.
Incredible. Mizuhara now faces up to 30 years in prison. Meanwhile, Ohtani and the World Series favorite Dodgers, they face San Diego tonight.
Plenty of drama playing out in a different way on the golf course right now, too, right? Masters. Oh, yeah, I always forget. We have to change our tone.
You want to try that again?
Yes, plenty of drama playing out on the golf course as well, Scott.
At the Masters. Yes, yes. The theme song to the Masters, Marcy, is probably more soap operatic than it is dramatic. Although given Tiger Woods' lifetime story arc, both seem suitable. The latest chapter has him pursuing a record-tying 6th green jacket. Given his head-to-toe health ailments, though, Wood doesn't play any tournaments anymore, or not many anyway. But the Masters is special, just as Tiger Woods is.
Tiger for birdie. It's a 3.
Woods finished 1 under par through 13 holes yesterday before play was suspended, which means he'll be hobbling his way through 23 more holes today if he's to make the cut. His current position would see him do that, which would set a record in and of itself, with Woods currently tied with Gary Player and Fred Couples at 23 cuts made in a row. The difference is those other two guys, Marcy, didn't do it with a fused spine, surgically reconstructed knees, and metal rods in their legs. So good luck to Tiger. Today, it is a rich man's world.
Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
Sounds good.
That is Scott Regier with Morning Sports. Stay with us. Much more to come, but right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 2 degrees, sunny and seasonal for your Friday in Winnipeg. A high today of 10, warmer for the weekend. A program in Manitoba's Interlake that helps survivors of sexual assault says its future is in doubt after the federal government ended its funding. Survivors Hope Crisis Center runs the Sexual Assault Recovery and Healing, or SARA, program. It offers victims in the Interlake Eastern region free counseling. It's received $75,000 from Ottawa annually for the past 3 years. Executive Director Coral Kendall says they were informed earlier this month Ottawa will no longer offer funding.
Devastation and what that meant for the survivors that we work with, and the severe outcomes that cut can cause towards the real lack of support that will now exist without that program.
A federal government spokesperson says funding was only set for 3 years. Fire season has already started in northern Manitoba. Earl Simmons at the Manitoba Wildlife Service says there's already been 3 fires this week, and that's not normal. Simmons says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry. He says the province has made some adjustments to its firefighting strategy over the winter.
As soon as the fire danger starts going up, we want to move helicopters, manpower into that area so that we have ability to catch fires when they're small before they get large.
Simmons says the province also hopes to hire people in rural and northern communities to serve as emergency firefighters. Manitoba has a new groundwater agreement with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ottawa. The province's deal on sharing surface waters will soon include underground aquifers that cross their borders. Patrick Chernesky is with the Prairie Province's Water Board. He says the change is welcome, especially as drought impacts groundwater levels.
Most of the water that people think of is surface water. So it's an important aspect because increasingly rural and urban residents are drawing upon groundwater.
Chernesky says the agreement will likely be signed in the coming months and could cover close to 30 major transborder aquifers. A 34-year-old man is dead after he drove down the wrong lane on the Perimeter Highway and crashed into a concrete divider. RCMP were called about the vehicle driving down the wrong lane on the perimeter near Lagimod-Gere shortly before 5 yesterday morning. As officers headed to the area, a second call made to RCMP reported a crash at that location. When they arrived, they found a pickup truck, which police believe had crossed the median, traveled east down the westbound lane at a high speed before crashing into the divider. An elder and residential school survivor supports Wab Kinew's push to change the prayer spoken at the Manitoba legislature. The premier says Manitoba is a diverse place, and the prayer or opening statement before question period should reflect that. Geraldine Shingus agrees it's time to get in step with the times.
It's from 1937, and we're now in 2024, and a lot of our faiths have changed.
Kinew has invited faith leaders and other Manitobans to help redesign the prayer. MPs have a busy day ahead of them in the House of Commons, picking up where they left off at midnight, voting for more than 200 Conservative amendments on the Trudeau government's Sustainable Jobs Bill. The bill outlines how the government plans to prepare energy workers as the world begins to transition away from fossil fuels towards clean energy. The amendments are what's left of the thousands of changes the Conservatives first proposed back in the fall. You can hear the latest national and international news on World Report at 8. 8. The Blue and Gold are almost $6 million in the black. The Blue Bombers' annual report pegs their operating profit of last year at $5.7 million. President and CEO Wade Miller says winning is key, but that's not all.
This goes back to our fans and the game day experience, and it goes hand in hand with winning and also the game day experience, the affordability of the event, from the ticket prices to, the specials we have prior to the game.
Miller says some of the profit will be used to replace the turf before this season. We'll make that 5 straight wins for the Winnipeg Jets.
Backhander, score! Nikolai Ehlers with his 200th NHL goal, and it's 1-0.
Nikolai Ehlers in the first period on TSN, his 200th career goal, as you heard there, and what a beauty. The Jets in Dallas, one of the best teams in the league. Winnipeg wins it 3-0. Coach Rick Bowness, like what he saw from Ehlers.
He was good at both ends of the ice. You saw that back check in the second period. That's just as impressive as the goals. So I thought he had a really, really solid game at both ends of the ice.
And Bowness says Laurent Brossoit in net was outstanding with 24 saves. It was Brossoit's third shutout of the season. Winnipeg now moves into second spot in the Central Division, 5 points behind the team they just beat. The Stars still in first. The Jets have the same points as Colorado, and that's where Winnipeg wraps up this road trip against the Avalanche tomorrow afternoon. You can find more news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather Wells, Abby was looking at the last time Winnipeg was, you might have heard this, so you might know the answer, which is okay. The last time we would have seen temperatures, in the 20s.
Oh my goodness, no. When?
October 3rd.
I don't remember that day. I'm sure it was beautiful.
Wasn't that Election Day, actually? Now that I'm thinking back, I think it might have been Election Day. Nevertheless, this weekend we are potentially going to get there. Today, not so much. Abby's in now with our regional forecast.
Yes, that's a long wait from October 3rd till today. It's a very, very long wait. But right now, we will get there. Definitely by the weekends. We are looking at the daytime highs on Saturday. It's going to be soaring to the upper teens, most likely lower than 20s. It's going to hover between 19s and 20 in that spot. That's mostly for the southern parts of the province. That's what the forecast that they're seeing in the future forecast, saying it might change. But what they see right now is 19 on Saturday afternoon, and it wouldn't really come really, really low from there. Right now in Winnipeg, we are at 2 degrees under clear skies. A peek at what's in store for today. It looks like we're in for a treat, mainly sunny conditions throughout the day with temperatures climbing to a high of 10 degrees. Now, folks, it's a perfect day, I'll tell you, if you want to soak up some sunshine, but keep an eye out for changes as the day progresses. Because tonight, we'll be seeing increasing cloudiness and then a chance of showers creeping in on us late this evening and into the overnight period. Across the province, heading west to Brandon, where it's currently -2 with partly cloudy conditions. Brandon will be seeing mainly sunny skies later and then heading to a high of 11 degrees. Moving north to Thompson, it's chilly at -2 under cloudy skies. Today expects more of the same you saw yesterday, which is like a chance of flurries here and there, and then heading to a high of +3. Further north in Churchill, it's even colder at -7. Darwin is at 0. Gimli is at -1. Steinbach is at -3. And finally, Morris is at -4. And Clare in the Pembina Valley region will enjoy mainly sunny skies and head into a high of 12. But across the province, the north is seeing mostly cloud conditions, and the south will be seeing mainly sunny conditions.
Nice. Your sister's calling. Pick it up.
Yeah, I'll take it. Hi, sister.
That actually might have been the traffic line. But Dylan's in here, so please call back. This morning's been fairly uneventful, but what do we know about the commute?
Well, we heard from Jeff with a G mentioning lights at Logan and Weston are all flashing red. So treat that intersection as an all-way stop. It might cause some delays if there's a lot of traffic heading through that intersection. But yeah, remember, treat it as an all-way stop. That's Logan and Weston. I also just want to mention that puppy we heard running around northbound Dunkirk earlier. They did call back to let us, the person who informed us called back to say, like, the dog is a Shiba Inu. They don't know where the owners are. So if,
the person that got the puppy out of traffic
so they're
is
trying
not the
to,
owner.
Yeah, they're trying to reach out to the owner, find who that is. They're hopefully going to find it real soon because,
Yeah.
it's a cute little puppy.
No doubt. And those look like mini huskies, if I'm thinking correctly. They're beautiful little dogs,
Real
a little
adorable.
bit different coloring.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Keep an
Okay.
eye on that if you're out there looking for your dog. As for the commute, quiet Friday, lovely day out there, great day to bike or walk or get out and enjoy the nice weather. If you see anything out there on the commute, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Dylan. So Dylan Longhurst in studio with us. He's heading back to the other side of the glass. So if that was a traffic tip with that live call and call us back. 780-0893. Well, speaking of calls, we're about to get into a whole section of the show with a lot of your listener feedback. Let's start with something actually that was in the news yesterday. So yesterday we were sharing that the city of Winnipeg is looking into weekly trash cleanups at homeless encampments at an estimated cost, they said, of about $4 million.
Good morning. It's Bill Dentry calling. I've been listening to your information on the cost of cleanup for the homeless camps, and I find the math is just a little bit incredible. The city says it'll cost $4 million to clean up 150 homeless camps on a weekly basis. If you do the math, 4 million divided by 150, and then divide that by 12, that works out to over $2,200 a month. Wouldn't it just be cheaper to give the homeless people a place to live and dispense with that? Probably even save money.
Hi, my name is Rowena Fisher. $4 million to clean up 150 campsites weekly. That's obviously absurd. Last time I was involved in this, the city wouldn't even put in dumpsters. And the truth is, a lot of those people will clean the place up, but they've got nowhere to put the stuff. And an example of that is the number of grocery store carts that are down there that are full of rubbish. These people are trying to clean up, but there's nowhere to put it. So at the very least, please put in some dumpsters. It's the least the city can do.
Thanks for the calls on that issue. Appreciate you weighing in. The story's online. If you missed this one, 788-3205 is the listener line. cbc.ca/Manitoba is the website. Now, you also filled the listener line talking to us about sharing the road, the idea of biking and driving. We actually, because stories, of course, move through the day, we had those listener lines air on Up to Speed yesterday afternoon because they had a guest from Bike Winnipeg on. So it was appropriate to play those there in that conversation with Faith Fundell and Mark Coho. If you want to hear that, a reminder, go to the CBC Listen app. You can find any of our programming from any of our shows there. And often it includes all these calls that are coming in. So keep them coming as we engage with you over the issues that matter most to you as Manitobans. Speaking of which, let's dig into this one. As we have been sharing, Premier Rob Canoe does want a new daily legislative prayer that's more inclusive of all faiths and also those people who don't identify with one faith.
As we're called by the Speaker of the House to reflect on the people, on a higher power, on the province, on the welfare and prosperity, with the greatest of humility, I would ask for your help in designing words that every Manitoban would feel included by.
Those comments coming yesterday, right around this time, actually. Premier Rob Canoe speaking at a breakfast with the Manitoba Multi-Faith Council live in Winnipeg. Now, he is inviting, as you heard, faith leaders and Manitobans to redesign the prayer. As you heard in the news, Heather mentioned it was adopted in 1937. It has changed little since. The Speaker of the House recites it before the start of question period. Here's a sample. So this is Speaker Tom Lindsay with the current prayer.
O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen.
You're writing into us about this idea of changing it to be more inclusive this morning. Peter Wolgamut wrote in, starting the day with a statement or an intent or reminder of purpose makes sense. Praying to a particular deity does not. Our schools have, for the most part, abandoned having everyone participate in a sectarian prayer at the start of the day, other than the remaining bits in our national anthem. It's changed. So why does our provincial legislature still do so? Peter questioning, why it was there in the first place this long. CBC's Jim Agapito knew there was a lot of perspectives important to include in this conversation. So yesterday he hit the street to find out what people think about changing the prayer to be more inclusive.
Hi, my name is Hunter Reynolds. As a non-religious person myself, it seems a little strange, I guess. But I understand that it brings value to some people. So, like, if it does, it doesn't really cause much harm, I feel.
Now, Premier Canoe says that he wants to change, saying that it feels overtly Christian. He says he wants it to be inclusionary and representative. How do you feel about that?
I totally agree. That's totally true, yeah. I feel like the only way that could cause harm is if it makes some people feel as though, like, you know, they're being underrepresented. So yeah, making it more inclusive is only a plus, really.
How would you change his prayer?
I do not know. I guess you could try to just make it like more vague in general, which could be nice. Or yeah, you could just try to like cover as many different religions and stuff as you want. I don't know.
Should they get rid of it altogether?
Honestly, that seems like a pretty good idea to me too. At this point, since it's like such a big part of the process, I don't know what value it really brings to people anymore, considering for them it's probably just like, oh yeah, they're just going through the motions at this point, you know? And it would shorten the time it takes to get legislation done, so maybe that's a good idea.
It's Maeve Allen. I mean, yeah, I think it's a pretty good example that we don't have separation of church and state in Canada. I think a lot of people would like to think we do, but that's like a pretty overt example that we don't, and it probably doesn't speak to a lot of the citizens who live here. So I could see why people would not really want to keep using that prayer at the beginning of stuff. I think politics should be secular. So I don't really see why there's need for any kind of religious language in politics.
If you had the chance, how would you change this prayer?
I'm not sure. I just think it's a politician's duty is to the citizens, and that is a secular duty, and I just don't think really religion has a place in that conversation, personally, at all.
My first name is Meme, and that goes same for the last name, so I have a same first and last name. I think it gives everyone a faith-wise upliftment before starting in legislature. Prayers also means like attesting to everyone's faith, so when you take a pledge for prayer, it also means that you're abiding to say truth, whatever you're going to say during the legislative meetings and all. So I think it's important. Since I come from a Muslim community, I think all these sects and religions, it should be included, and it should be given same amount of equal status, whether it's Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, everyone. So everyone here in Canada feels included. And also, like, if being an legislative leader, if you yourself just consider one religion, then also all the people living in the area, they'll feel the same, and that will lead to so many differences amongst the people and fights, I believe. I think it's important. It demonstrates one's belonging as a human, what you're following, and like attesting to it, performing your own rights and duties. So I think that's important.
Colin Salzan. I don't necessarily see it as completely necessary, so I'm indifferent to whether it is or not. It's probably more of a traditional thing. I wouldn't have a problem with it being taken out because I don't think religion is as important part of our society in this current time. I think it's probably just a kind of a relic of an old era, that prayer being said during the assembly. So I'd be pretty much indifferent either way if it gets kept in or taken out.
Premier Canoe says that he wants the prayer changed to be more inclusionary and representative of the people of all faiths. How do you feel about that statement?
I think it's definitely comes from a good place. I think there definitely wouldn't be anything wrong with making it more inclusionary. But I would say probably the best way forward is to take it out completely, just to separate all religions from government.
That was CBC's Jim Agapito out asking Winnipeggers for your thoughts on the legislative prayer changing. Now, as I've continued to remind you this morning, Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1 has a call-in portion of the show. And today, they're going to be asking, how should the prayer that starts each legislative session be changed? So you can call them, and if you want to program the numbers in your phone, 780-0893 for live local calls between 12:30 and 1. And outside of Winnipeg, that number is 1-800-268-5483. So if you want to program those numbers in. The guest today to help through the conversation with Janet Stewart, who's hosting, is Dr. Rehman Abdurrahman, who is talking about faith and prayer and its role in the legislature today, but has long actually, Dr. Abdurrahman has long been advocating for One Winnipeg and has had has had a campaign, in fact, to try to get all of the holidays in the province, all the different multi-faith holidays that are recognized by employers and by the city officially, so that they're recognized perhaps as stat holidays or people get them off, things like that, beyond and outside of Christmas, for example. So he will be a great guest to talk through this conversation or work through this conversation with you. So make sure you're part of the call-in between 12:30 and 1 this afternoon.
For breaking news as it happens, stay with CBC News. For the latest updates and what it means for Canadians, stay with CBC News. When the biggest stories break, both at home and around the world, stay with CBC News.
It is right now 11 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Mainly clear this morning. It's been pretty nice. I just realized I haven't updated my temperatures, though, in a bit. So we are heading for a high of 10 degrees, lots of sunshine, and we're sitting at 2 right now. I've been saying 3, pardon me. 2 is the hot spot in the province. The cold spot is Dooley Lake at -8, but all of us are going to be looking to improve from there. Well, speaking of the weather, March 2024, last month, was the hottest our planet has ever seen since records started being kept. That's according to the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service. Now, it is not just March. Every month in the past 10 months has been the hottest on record as well. And the trend looks like it's going to continue, at least for a little while. Earlier this week, we had an interview looking at this from a bigger perspective, a national perspective, and we were questioning whether or not, because the records continue to be broken, people will start to tune out the real issue with this. So today we're going to look a little bit more locally inside Manitoba about the impact. Alex Crawford is with us, an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba Centre for Earth Observation Science, and joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Alex.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So what is your sense of the seriousness of 10 record-breaking months in a row when it comes to weather records?
So first, I think that those 10 months in a row is largely a climate change story. Absolutely. That's part of it. The other thing that's going on is the Earth does have these natural cycles of having warmer and cooler years. And last year was a very strong El Nino year. I think that's been in the press pretty well. And El Ninos tend to make the world warmer as a whole. The other thing that hasn't got as much press is that the Atlantic Ocean, the North Atlantic Ocean, has also been a lot warmer than normal. Those two combined with climate change helped really push us over the edge of being a record year.
A sign of climate change, but is it a sign of climate change accelerating?
1 year is not enough to make that sort of statement. I think that if you were to go forward in time and you looked at 2024, 2025, 2026, if they continue that sort of trend, then you might start to be able to make that sort of statement.
What should we be concerned about, or at least mindful of, when it comes to this against some of the changes we've already seen in Manitoba specifically, do you think?
Yeah, so thinking locally right now, one of the things that this really warm winter that we had in the context of a warmer world overall, is that we don't have much of a snowpack right now. We did get some good snow. If you remember all the way back in October, November, we got some good snowstorms, but those melted away. We usually start off the year with more snow than we have. So from a drought perspective, having less snow to start the year makes it so that we're in greater danger of having a drought. It also was an abnormally dry winter overall. So we are set up pretty well in Manitoba for a dry summer. Alberta, Saskatchewan, they're even worse off than we are right now. So that also leads to concerns about the wildfire season being similarly bad as last year, which was a record bad year for Canada.
Yeah, as we know. Now, in Manitoba, we saw the impact of smoke mostly from other provinces coming in. We were very lucky last year in escaping the worst of it. But if you look to previous years, we had very bad fire years. I believe 2021 was particularly bad here. And close by, I think sometimes when you're in the city of Winnipeg beyond the smoke, you don't realize how close those fires are and how many of our friends, neighbors, and fellow Manitobans that affects. What if we go way up north in Manitoba? What are your concerns around Hudson Bay?
Well, I mean, honestly, again, it's the wildfires. There are communities up there that are already preparing. They know what the data say. They know that, the weather could change. It could end up being a wet summer. That could help. But if it's an average or dry summer, then it could be a very bad wildfire season for them. And that is right now one of the things that I've heard being high on people's minds.
If we pull out of Manitoba, Noah, or pull the lens back rather, and look just at some of the bigger things that we're hearing about, there's a term, marine heat wave, that is talked about a lot. Can you explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one that I think is going to be more and more important this year. So a marine heat wave is similar to heat waves that we know in a city like Winnipeg. It's when it's abnormally warm, warm enough that it might cause like health issues for people or for crops. Now, a marine heat wave means it's the same idea, but it's happening in the ocean. They tend to not be quite as intense as in the atmosphere. Everything in the ocean is slower in change, so it warms up more slowly, cools down more slowly. But that also means that heat waves in the ocean can be very prolonged. And when you have 10 months in a row that are breaking temperature records in the atmosphere, that extra energy ends up in the ocean. And so it's likely that you'll hear more about things like coral bleaching events this year. You might hear more about seagrass or kelp or mangrove ecosystems feeling stress because of all of that extra heat. And that's important because those sorts of organisms, coral, kelp, seagrass, mangroves, they're the basis of marine ecosystems. So if they were to experience major collapse, it'd be similar to if you lost trees in the Amazon rainforest. The rest of the organisms in those ecosystems would also struggle.
Is there a way to determine how long the trend will continue for, or is the answer going to be it depends what we do as human beings?
Yes,
and as governments
what you said
and
is exactly
and,
right.
Yeah.
In terms of a climate change trend, the number one biggest source of uncertainty is how much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases do humans emit into the atmosphere. And so it really does come down to human decisions, human policy, which means the biggest action you can take is anything that can affect human policy, governmental policy, not just individual decisions.
Is there anything you're particularly hoping for in the budget next week? The federal budget's going to come out. You know, they're going to be putting forth climate action. As a scientist, what do you watch for?
As a scientist, I try to stay a little bit removed from what the exact policies are, because I think either a left or right-leaning government could make actions that would be consistent with their ideology, but could still address climate action. So for me, the biggest thing that I'm looking for is something that pushes us as a system, as a community, as an entire society to move forward, as opposed to small actions that just eat around the edges.
You heard me mention when I introduced you that we had a previous conversation looking at this from a wider perspective, and the scientist in that conversation, the biologist, was saying that he fears people are going to start tuning this out, record after record after record. What's your sense of that?
I think that's definitely a concern. And so I, as a scientist, can only report what I know as being consistent with the evidence that we have, and hope that people that are hearing this are understanding the uncertainty that we really do have, but also are understanding the magnitude of the issues that we have. A lot of climate change is reversible. A lot of what we're changing, we can get back, but there are some things, especially in the biological realm, that we could push ecosystems into a state that they wouldn't recover in our lifetimes or even our grandchildren's lifetimes. So that's when I say magnitude of the situation. But also, by saying a lot of it's reversible, I do think that there's plenty of hope. So the one other thing I've been trying to do more recently is being a little bit more positive as opposed to doom and gloom. There's a lot that we can do to reverse the changes that we're seeing. Something like heat waves is very reversible. We will not see as many of them if we are cutting down our emissions and eventually reversing the warming that we have. So there are things that we can do, and there are futures that we can conceive of that absolutely are positive change.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning via Zoom, Alex Crawford. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's Alex Crawford, an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba Centre for Earth Observation Science. Obviously, Earth Day is coming up as well. So if you want to weigh in, if you're one of those people that says, here's what I'm doing, 788-3205. 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Provincial fire officials warn Manitoba is off to an early start for wildfires. Earl Simmons at the Provincial Service says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry. There have been 3 fires in the north this week alone. And Manitoba has a new groundwater agreement with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ottawa. The province's deal on sharing surface waters will soon include underground aquifers that cross the borders, a deal to help manage groundwater reliably and sustainably. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we have a pastor that's going to weigh in on this discussion about the prayer being changed at the start of the legislative session. And pardon me, that conversation's coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. In Winnipeg, mainly clear, 2 degrees, blue sky. The commute's going fine so far this morning, 788-3093 if you need to update anything. And where we got a call actually this morning with an update that was important is something that I said, which is true, but I didn't elaborate and make it local. So LSOP, we played music from her, and we talked about the fact that she's going to be at the Montreal Folk Fest, and she is. But you don't have to travel because she's going to be playing the Winnipeg Folk Festival as well. So put that on your list for this summer. And thanks for the call.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
This is a damn fine cup of coffee.
You might know Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks, maybe from Sex and the City. Kyle is the star of a new adaptation of the video game Fallout, but he was also the star of the original film adaptation of Dune. So Kyle will be here to talk about Fallout and how he felt watching the new Dune. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Falls off the fork, doesn't catch enough sauce. The food podcaster Dan Pashman was not happy with the pasta shapes in his pantry, and so he invented a new one. Dan Pashman on rethinking the noodle, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Chris O'Neill Yates in St. John's. Just one witness is returning to the public inquiry into foreign interference this morning. The head of CSIS, David Vigneault, is being re-examined. After hearing from politicians and their staffers, the commission has more questions about how Canada's intelligence agencies have been operating. Janice McGregor joins me from our Parliamentary Bureau. Well, Janice, this inquiry has certainly illuminated how these spy agencies work, hasn't it?
Yes, indeed. And in particular, how subjective intelligence can be. That briefing documents are not so much carved in stone, proven facts, concrete evidence, but more observational, things being flagged for the awareness of those elected to make decisions. And in their testimony this week, Justin Trudeau and his senior staff said they've learned over time to be skeptical, ask questions, push back. And in the process, they've discovered some of what CSIS provides doesn't paint the whole picture, or even maybe an accurate one. The Prime Minister was asked yesterday whether that's impacted his confidence in the head of the spy agency.
No government, no leader should simply be a passive receiver of information and intelligence.
It's not the job of an intelligence service to tell the elected head of government what to do. Something to keep in mind as this inquiry continues to probe the intelligence sharing on foreign interference.
So what are the specific issues that Vigneault has to clear up today?
Well, the case for this somewhat extraordinary witness recall is based on 3 key documents, briefing documents from October and November of 2022 and February of 2023, the final one in particular, notably after leaks about foreign election meddling hit the media. These redacted top secret materials were only disclosed after the director of CSIS had testified, too late for any of the parties withstanding at this inquiry to clarify the contents in cross-examination. And on top of that, we heard this week that because the Prime Minister and his staff are often briefed orally, in part for security reasons, they don't send you home with a lot of handouts, not everything in these documents was actually conveyed, including what was characterized as stark conclusions, warnings to the government that it needs to take more decisive action and impose consequences on perpetrators, or else this interference will persist. Today's extra hour is about getting to the bottom of whether that message was actually delivered.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
To the Middle East now, where Israel is preparing for a direct attack from Iran. A new report this morning suggests that U.S. officials are concerned a strike could happen in the next 2 days. For the latest, let's go to Abby Kuhassan, who is following developments in London.
Israeli officials say they are getting ready for an unprecedented Iranian attack. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this could happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Lina Khatlieb is the director of the Middle East program at SOAS University in London.
I think what Iran wants more than anything is to save face and to be seen as having retaliated somehow. What it does not want is all-out war.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei will make the decision. He has already vowed to directly strike Israel after its embassy building was attacked last week in Syria, killing a top commander. But the response doesn't necessarily mean a strike on Israeli soil, says Mehran Kamrava, a professor of government at Georgetown University in Doha.
I think the retaliation would be either on Israeli diplomatic facilities somewhere around the world or commercial interests.
The White House has reportedly reached out to Arab partners like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, asking for their help to defuse the situation. The U.S. has now restricted travel for all embassy and consulate staff in Israel out of an abundance of caution.
The Biden administration has been quite cognizant of the fact that Israel has been trying to drag the United States into the conflict.
Some analysts say Netanyahu is trying to deflect attention from Gaza by highlighting the conflict with Iran, where he and Biden are exactly on the same page. Abby Cuevas in CBC News, London.
The U.S. House Speaker will be at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida today. Mike Johnson is hoping for some show of support from the presumed Republican presidential candidate. Johnson is facing threats to his speaker role from hardliners within his own party. Richard Madden is following this story from Washington. Richard, what's the stated reason for Johnson's meeting with Trump?
Yeah, so the two will appear side by side and reportedly introduce a bill to make it illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Now, of course, this has long been illegal in the U.S., so this event is mostly for show to fire up the party's base in this critical election year. But there's another more pivotal reason why the speaker is cozying up to Trump so publicly. He needs his support as his speakership is under threat from within his own party just 6 months into the job. Far-right Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene recently filed a motion to oust him for not fully embracing the Trump agenda. Keep in mind, House Republicans have a razor-thin majority, so it would take just a handful of them to vote him out. And Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't backing down.
The current Speaker of the House we have right now is getting rolled in every single meeting. He is negotiating from weakness.
So the Speaker's allies have reportedly asked Trump to publicly support him at their joint appearance today. So we'll be watching very closely to see how this plays out.
So Trump does have a history of undermining the Speaker's agenda. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, this is the dilemma. Johnson needs Trump, but Trump has consistently lampooned his agenda, instructing House Republicans to vote against their own bills, to rejecting foreign aid money to Ukraine. But it's clear Speaker Johnson is tying his fortunes to Trump, whether it's by choice or for his political survival.
That's the CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
4 months after kicking French troops out of the country, Niger is welcoming Russian military personnel. State media in the West African country say military trainers arrived last night in the capital, Niamey. After last summer's military coup, Niger's military rulers have been aligning themselves with Russia. Neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso are also seeking Russia's help battling an Islamist insurgency in the Sahel region. An outbreak of avian influenza in the U.S. is creating concern for dairy farmers. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says for the first time, bird flu is being detected in cows. Farms in several U.S. states are reporting cases of the highly contagious virus. Tony Waterman reports.
Rachel Moser and her husband have owned this dairy farm in Missouri for more than a decade. But an outbreak of bird flu among dairy cows has her concerned.
It's causing cows to dramatically reduce their milk production.
While the virus hasn't been detected in Missouri, it has been identified in more than a dozen herds in 8 states in recent weeks. Dairy farmers are now scrambling to protect their cattle, some reportedly chopping down trees to keep wild birds away. The spread of the highly contagious virus has raised concerns about animal-to-human transmission. A dairy farm worker in Texas tested positive for the virus on April 1st. But Dr. Dimitri Daskalasis from the CDC says the risk to most people is very low.
Really, it's important to connect to public health and medical care to make sure that you're being observed.
Experts say it's also unlikely that people could catch bird flu from eating dairy products. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
A Vancouver Island senior has won a partial victory in the fight to keep flying her drone over an industrial ship dismantling site to make sure it's not polluting. As Yvette Bren reports, her odd case may end up creating new case law around drones in Canada.
Almost every day, Mary Reynolds flies her drone over a ship dismantling operation, often posting videos of the Union Bay site. When an employee grabbed the 73-year-old's drone out of the air and broke it, she went to court to try to get a restraining order against the company. Deepwater Recovery owner Mark Jurisic.
We've done nothing to stop Mary Reynolds. She goes on her blog and calls me a thug.
He countersued Reynolds, claiming she was part of a malicious campaign to destroy his business.
If they can scare, one or two people with the threat of a lawsuit, pretty soon no one will speak up.
But this week, a BC Supreme Court justice dismissed the company's attempt to go after Reynolds for damages. The judge said her actions were in the public interest. Her lawyer, Jason Grattel, says her videos led to provincial cleanup orders at the site.
Her work has led to numerous federal and provincial inspection and findings by the BC Ministry of Environment that the ship-breaking operation has contravened environmental statutes.
It's still up in the air if the court will let her keep flying her drone, but whatever the final decision, it will set a precedent. As of now, her lawyer says there's no case law about flying drones over ship-breaking sites. Until there is, Reynolds says she's got no plans to stop. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Chris O'Neill Yates in St. John's. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. You're with CBC under a clear Friday sky. It's blue out there. It is a little crisp, though. I love that Abby looked back at the records. This weekend, should we see the 20s in Winnipeg, temperatures in the 20s if we get there? The last time we would have seen that in the city, Abby says, is October 3rd, which also happened to be Election Day in Manitoba. So we'll see if we get there. Today we won't. Abby's in with that forecast today in just a moment. Well, this half hour on the program, you've been filling up our listener lines and our Facebook pages, and that's great because we're going to talk this half hour about something that deserves proper discussion. The Premier has said he wants the help of faith leaders to change the current prayer that's recited at the Manitoba Legislature. We're going to talk to a pastor to get his input on the issue this half hour, and we'll remind you that today on Radio Noon's Call-In, they'll be taking live calls on this. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, though, and find out what other stories are making news in the province. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, an arbitrator has found there is a, quote, unacceptable risk to safety to employees at the Health Sciences Centre, and the arbitrator has given Shared Health 30 days to come up with a safety plan. We'll hear more about that coming up. As well, provincial fire officials warn Manitoba is off to an early start for wildfires. This week alone, there have been 3 in the north. All are human-caused. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast. Abby, I was talking about you.
Yeah, I know you were talking about me, and I'm really hoping for that 20. But this weekend, I don't see us get. We're going to be in the teens,
We'll be close.
like 16, 17,
Yeah.
or close to 18. That's what it's going to look like. But hopefully in the future, we should be getting close to that 20. But right now, like you said, it's crispy. It's crisp. It's 2 degrees in the city, mainly sunny. We're heading for a high of 10 degrees today with more sunshine. Now, tonight, we'll see some cloud increase with possible showers into the late parts of the evening. That would make tomorrow start cloudy with the showers still with us, and then it's going to clear up later in the morning. We'll be seeing a high of 18 tomorrow. Now, Brandon, Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris, all clear. Sunshine now. All at 0 degrees. Churchill is at -2. Thompson has not moved all morning. Thompson is currently at -2 rather. Churchill has not moved all morning. Churchill is at -7 with light snow, heading to a high of -4. Dauphin is at 1, seeing a mix of sun and cloud right now, heading to a high of 10. But in Winnipeg, we're heading to a high of 10 today.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in the commute with Dylan Longhurst.
Yeah, it's been a very quiet Friday morning and
lovely Friday morning as well. So, get outside and go for a walk. I know that's my plan later today once those temperatures just creep up a little bit more. A nice walk today sounds like a lovely time.
It does, except maybe not if you're me. And listeners might have noticed this, Dylan. It looks like I'm crying. And especially during the last interview about climate change, people must have thought, wow, Marcy's taking this really seriously, which is upsetting, climate change. But I ran out of allergy meds, and it's just my eye will not stop leaking. Like, right eye is going crazy. Yeah.
Tis the season
Wow,
for
is
spring
it ever?
allergies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's back in time.
So make sure you've got yours if you are heading out for a dusty walk, for sure. But the actual commute this morning, as you said, it really has been pretty good.
Yeah, not a lot of calls. We heard earlier in the program about flashing red lights at the intersection of Logan and Weston. No word on if that's still an ongoing issue that might be resolved. Although if it's not, remember, treat flashing red intersections as an all-way stop and use caution when proceeding through. If that's still an issue and you want to give us an update, or if you see anything else getting in your way out there on the commute, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
So let's continue our ongoing discussion about a change that may be coming to the province. Manitoba's premier yesterday morning at a live breakfast and interfaith gathering expressed that he wants to change the prayer that's recited in the legislature. Here is what the prayer currently sounds like. Once again, it's read by Speaker Tom Lindsay.
O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen.
Premier Wab Kinew says he wants to make that more inclusive of people who practice faiths other than Christianity, but also of people who don't practice a religious faith at all and are serving in the legislature. Kinew invited faith leaders, though, and other Manitobans to redesign their prayer. So this is a conversation he wants all of us to have. The decision, of course, will be left to the legislature's Rules Committee. It's chaired by the Speaker. It includes the NDP and PC House leaders, as well as an independent member. So we're getting various perspectives on this, and John Neufeld is next to share his. He's the lead pastor at Eastview Community Church, and he joins us live in Studio 15. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you think, first of all, of the intention to want to change the prayer?
Well, I wasn't at the interfaith gathering yesterday morning. I heard about it yesterday afternoon. And so I went and I listened to the comments, and I understand the value and intention of diversity in a very pluralistic province, and the desire to include everybody's voices in the conversation. And I think it's a significant thing for people of all faiths or no faith at all to pay careful attention to, because what's chosen, the words that are chosen, will matter to many people, or potentially, because they're spoken, will also be something that some people deeply struggle or even are offended by.
Does the prayer, as we currently heard it just now, though, in your view, exclude? Does it need change? Because it's clearly a prayer for those that are rooted in Christianity.
I would suggest that it sounds an awful lot like 1937 when it was written, and of the church traditions of the time. In that sense, it's generic in that it speaks of God and Almighty. Many faiths would speak of God in those terms. What does it mean for us to pray specifically? It's not a particularly Christian prayer in that it doesn't invoke or name Jesus Christ or the Trinity. It just refers more broadly. And in that sense, I'm guessing that in 1937 there was already a sensitivity to that.
It doesn't name Allah, though, right?
It does not.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't talk about those that are not religious. No. So by its very nature, it excludes, one could argue. Does prayer belong in the legislature? We're hearing from a lot of people this morning that they're saying they're questioning that. The Premier's intention is he's not said he wants to remove the prayer. He said he wants to engage people, and we'll talk about it. But what's your sense of that? Some people that are saying maybe it doesn't belong there in that venue.
When I listened to the Premier's comments, the preference for a much more inclusive prayer was interesting because it's still a prayer. And so those who are not of faith and don't have convictions, or actually have convictions that are otherwise, I think it's important to pay attention to those things. The question of no faith at all is an interesting one to bring to the table, because I would be curious to know how someone of no faith at all would introduce and welcome a gathering and call us to higher values and purpose. And I think that's worth paying attention to.
Someone may have faith, though, but not believe in religion, and may even support, gatherings of religion and discussions of such, but they may not, follow a specific religion. I'm wondering if it's possible, as we work forward, to look at the idea of a prayer that covers all faiths. That may be the goal, as stated by the Premier, but in your view, what might be the challenges with that?
I think if we take prayer seriously, the person praying is engaging someone, in this case, a spiritual being of some sort, and they're of personal, earnest conviction. To make it generic actually is a disservice to most faiths, because we are particular people. We have particular faith, we have deep passions and strong convictions. I would actually suggest that the prayer be more particular, but there be more people who pray different prayers, where there's actually a prayer on Monday that is spoken by a person of Catholic faith, a person on Tuesday of the Sikh faith, of Thursday of the Muslim faith, on Friday an evangelical, that they are able to express from their deep conviction words that are authentic. I'd also be pointing out that there's a significant challenge when a person of no faith is asked to speak a prayer that isn't their own. And a person of one faith would be really stretched to speak a prayer that voices the convictions of another faith. And I would suggest we rather have a diversity in prayers rather than make something generic that seems to fit everyone, but in fact has just become bland, calls us to little other than aspiring ideas.
If we were to go down that path and there were different prayers spoken by the person whose faith was represented daily, what would happen to members in the House? What do you view as, then in one way everyone's included over time, but on a daily basis people aren't included. So I'm wondering what if there's a challenge, as you said, with somebody who's not of a faith speaking a prayer that might involve another faith. Is there a challenge in being in the House for that prayer being spoken?
I've been in contexts of other faiths and other religions frequently. And one of the things that we're called to be is honorable and respectful and gracious. And when someone of another faith prays, it's actually a prompt and opportunity for me to, in my own way, silently, also engage my own life of prayer, and calls me to engage with my God and to engage with a Heavenly Father, a Savior who's impacted me. And I think in a multicultural, pluralistic society, that prompt isn't a bad prompt for everyone of every faith or no faith at all, for us to recognize our convictions.
What might you say to someone who may feel, you said that you weren't at the meeting, but you had conversations about this later in the day. There's a lot of conversation, and there should be right now going on about this. But what would you say to someone who is Christian, who feels that this might be an affront to Christianity? The idea of changing this prayer in itself.
I think every time there's change, people experience a loss. And so I think it's okay to consider the loss, a loss of tradition. I'm not sure that I would use the language of affront, but the loss of connection to historic events in our lives, including patterns of prayer that might have been in the Legislative Assembly over the years. I can imagine even a person who's returning to the legislature after having served there some years earlier, experiencing that this isn't the same. I think people of faith have to reckon with that in a changing world, and yet reach deeper into our faith, not resist cultural engagement. I think good faith engages culture meaningfully.
Somebody spoke to our producer, for example, a devout Christian, and said she felt like she was being erased. That's where that question came from. I'm wondering whether or not that is something that those might be conversations that people might be having moving forward, as you said, grappling with this?
I'll take the seriousness of that feeling, and say that those are things that we need to reckon with, particularly as we experience things that are meaningful to us being lost. I was in high school, I think, when the Lord's Prayer was removed from the public school system, and I was actually, as a pretty seriously committed Christian, I was quite grateful because the presence of the Lord's Prayer was actually an object of irritation and even ridicule to my secular friends. And so the presence of it and their reaction, while they weren't intending to offend me, they were speaking of me and my faith negatively because it was frankly imposed in their circumstances. And I think we have to be mindful of that sort of thing. And so I'm quite open to the fact that people will have deep feelings, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't change.
Therein lies the rub, though, right? Because then does that mean you couldn't bring your full identity to school, right? Because you'll hear people talk about that. So, and that's at the heart of this very sensitive and important discussion for all of us right now. I do have another question for you. I'm wondering what you would say to what prayer does for people who are about to work together, because this is a prayer that was at the beginning of the session. So, what in your estimation might prayer do?
I think prayer calls two things to our attention. One is that there is a larger story, and that larger story for many includes God. And for us in our province, that larger story also includes other storylines in our nation and our world. We lift our eyes beyond our immediate circumstances and say, there's more. It also calls us to deeper character, deeper integrity, to a commitment to be a certain kind of community, a certain kind of person in that community. And when we pray authentically, it both challenges our relationship with God and the larger story, but it also challenges our relationship with each other in how we interact. And so I think the place of prayer is actually deeply connected to civility in our public conversation. And we already have civility problems in our public conversation. I would suggest that the removal of prayer is of a variety of kinds is actually a way of saying we don't want the tension, and so we're not prepared to engage the conversation. I'd rather engage the conversation, experience the tension, and experience a civil conversation, a courteous, gracious conversation among peoples of different faith as they're in the process of legislating for our province.
John Neufeld, thank you very much for being here. And obviously, we're going to get other perspectives, and we've already started to hear from so many different people, but we appreciate having you here live with us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
John Neufeld live in our Studio 15 with us on CBC, the lead pastor at Eastview Community Church. Now, I have been alluding to the fact that there's a live call-in coming up, so let me give you a few details. Also, if you're listening now and you can weigh in now but not later, I'm going to give you the line where you can call and leave a message right now. So the call-in is on Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1. Janet Stewart is hosting for the next year. In fact, she's going to be hosting Noon because she's Marjorie Dalhouse is on mat leave. So they have a call-in portion that they just started on the program between 12:30 and 1. If you want to leave a message to be part of that conversation, you can leave that message now on the Radio Noon listener line. That number, 788-3797. It's different from our morning show one. 788-3797 to weigh in. The question is, how should the prayer that starts each legislative session be changed? And if you want to call in live this afternoon, please do so. It's 1-800-268-5483. Or it's 780-0893. And the guest for the half hour of that program, where the live calls will be taken, is going to be Dr. Rahman Abdul-Rahman on the question. So he has been long advocating actually for all holidays to be recognized in Winnipeg, all religious holidays of all sorts. So he'll be an interesting guest to have there to support as the calls come in. So please engage as we all move forward here in Manitoba.
Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Phelan. We're the hosts of the irreverent history podcast, The Secret Life of Canada.
We've covered everything from the history behind the iconic Bay blanket to why blackface is still a thing, and how all our histories can be traced back to our relationship with water.
Oh, you forgot about the controversial debate over which dessert is the most Canadian, the butter tart or the Nanaimo bar.
Yes, I did forget that. That was intense.
The Secret Life of Canada. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is 8:27 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app this morning. Nice sky out there, lots of sunshine. And I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us. So the federal budget's coming out next week. We actually had a really good discussion, or series of discussions, coming out of our provincial budget last week. I just want to ask you what's important to you as a Manitoban heading into the federal budget. We know housing is going to be a big top line in this budget. We know that the Renters' Bill of Rights has already been sort of, spoken about. It's going to be part of the budget. But there's all kinds of different areas that affect your life. So where are you living in Manitoba? Are you in a rural area? Or are you living on a First Nation? What do you need from the federal government? What do you hope is in this budget? Are your concerns around affordability at the grocery store? Or what do you want to see further around housing if you're someone that's hoping to own a house in the future, or if you are renting, or what if you own a business? What are you hoping the federal government might do for you? So if you want to weigh in as a Manitoban, we're currently putting together some of our work on how we're going to be covering the budget next week. And if you want your voice heard, remember, you can always reach out to us at radio893@cbc.ca. So I'd love it if you'd email me, radio893@cbc.ca. It is right now coming up to news time. And then right after our show, if you're a regular CBC listener, you know that the Current's coming up here this Friday morning, as always. After inventing a new shape of pasta, Dan Pashman decided he wanted to write a cookbook because he wanted to expand on the tried and true traditional ways that pasta has been served. Now, it's as a gift that home cooks like him. I'm sorry, this is not worded quite correctly. The Current sends me a promo. I'm just going to do full disclosure. So basically, he's going to be on the Current. He's going to be talking about pasta. He's going to be talking about his cookbook. And I can't wait to hear what new shape that he invented, because I'd have to Google it myself. I haven't seen it. So Dan Pashman is going to be on the Current with Matt Galloway, and that is coming up. Been a long week, folks. Forgive me. 2 degrees and sunny in Winnipeg. As mentioned, we're heading for a high of 10 degrees. The drive has been pretty good this morning overall. But I always like to still invite you to call the line if you need to update us, 780-0893, if there is anything that comes up urgently in the next few minutes. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells. An arbitrator has found a, quote, unacceptable risk to safety for staff at the Health Sciences Centre and has given Shared Health 30 days to come up with a safety plan. The report comes after the Manitoba Nurses Union filed a grievance on behalf of its members who felt unsafe in the HSC and in the area surrounding it, the parking garages. In the report, Chris Gibson says there are few outside security patrols, adding, no one should have to run a gauntlet of threatening or intimidating behavior when going to or leaving work. Institutional safety officers will begin patrolling the HSC campus starting next week, but Gibson says without changing where security personnel are, they will have little impact on safety risks to staff. Provincial fire officials warn Manitoba is off to an early start for wildfires. Earl Simmons is with the provincial service. He says the area from Swan River north to Lynn Lake and across to Norway House is exceptionally dry.
We've had 3 fires up in that area this week already. Usually on a regular year, we don't have fires in the north this soon. They occurred more in southern Manitoba, and unfortunately this time of year they're human-caused fires and they're preventable.
Simmons says the province has made some adjustments to its firefighting strategy over the winter. As soon as the fire danger goes up, helicopters and firefighters will be moved into those areas. Simmons says the province also hopes to hire people in rural and northern communities to serve as emergency firefighters. Underground water reserves on the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border will soon be managed collaboratively. It's part of a water-sharing agreement between Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and the aim is to manage shared groundwater aquifers. It is an important step, according to Patrick Chernesky with the Prairie Provinces Water Board. He says aquifers are particularly sensitive to pollution and drought.
We're all familiar with the streams and rivers and lakes, but they're perpetually moving. Groundwater also moves, but it's on a much slower sort of cycle. Aquifers often can take decades or sometimes centuries to, for the water to flow.
Chernesky says the agreement will likely be signed in the coming months to help manage groundwater reliably and sustainably. A program that helps survivors of sexual abuse in the Interlake Eastern region is in jeopardy after a cut in federal funding. Survivors Hope Crisis Center runs the Sexual Assault Recovery and Healing Program, or SARA. It offers victims free long-term counseling as well as access to legal supports. Executive Director Coral Kendall says the program's received $75,000 a year for the past 3 years from the federal government, but now the funding is stopped.
Huge loss, not only specifically to survivors that access our services, but it puts further strain on the healthcare system, on the justice system. It is a deficit to our other social services out here.
A federal government spokesperson says the funding was for a 3-year term and is now over. A Winnipeg rabbi says he supports the idea of a more inclusive prayer at the Manitoba legislature, but worries it's easier said than done. Rabbi Avron Altine is the director at Chabad Lubavitch Jewish Learning Center.
It's a noble idea. Whether it could be done in practical terms, I'm not sure. There's a lot of ideas, and putting them into something that it becomes real is always the challenge, and a lot of great ideas.
The current prayer recited by the speaker at the start of every question period has only changed a bit since being first uttered in 1937. Premier Wabkanu says he would like to see something that includes people from other faith traditions and those with no faith at all. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers posted a $5.7 million profit last year, but things aren't as rosy for the city's soccer team. The Valor cost the Bombers $1.25 million last year. Bomber President and CEO Wade Miller says the goal is to get Valor game attendance up to 5,000. He says they also need better results on the field.
We've made some changes both on the soccer operations side. We need better results on the field to help that. And we also need we dedicated ticketing resources specifically to Valor to try to move that needle.
Miller adds the team has to do more promotion because he doesn't think a lot of Winnipeggers even realize there's a pro soccer team in the city. You can find more news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
The commute this morning's been fine. 788-3093. Let's have a last look at the weather with Abby.
Yeah, it's forecast for Winnipeg today. Sunny and a seasonal high of 10 degrees across the province. Flores and the north ranging from highs of 3 to -4. And the south is going to see highs of 10 and 11.
Have an awesome time on your e-bike today, buddy.
Yourself, my sister.
Love it. It's great weather for that, right? Changing the mode of transportation, wearing the lighter jacket, getting out the layers. Have a great weekend, everyone. I want to give big thanks to the folks that are in our unit in Current Affairs here at CBC Manitoba, our hardworking team of associate producers. Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kickson, Shanley Vidal, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Jim Agapito, Dylan Longhurst, Daniel Friesen, May McKillop, and Bruce Layden. Our community reporter is Shanley Vidal. Host in unit, Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundal, and Janet Stewart. Producer in unit, Wendy Parker. YouTube producer, Brad Lillies. Nellie Gonzalez is a show producer in Current Affairs. Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio here. And big thanks to our news department. Heather Wells, Joni Nicolo, Aaron Broman, Chris Armstrong, and Megan Ketchison on the early crew. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are nothing without you listening, so thank you for spending some time with us here on this Friday morning and each and every day. We hope you join us again on Monday. Don't forget about that call-in on Radio Noon between 12:30 and 3. And also Faith Fundal back with a full edition of Up to Speed this afternoon to continue coverage of what's happening here at home in Manitoba. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again Monday, and The Current is coming up next.